You've been told that life is what you make it, that hard work pays off, that your thoughts are your own, that freedom is real. But deep inside, you know something doesn't add up. No matter how much you try to improve, it feels like you're playing a game with rigged rules. You chase success, fulfillment, love, and just when you get close, it all slips back into the same old pattern. Like a code that resets no matter how far you go. Like a loop. This is not about conspiracy. It's not about fiction. This is about reality, specifically the one you've been conditioned to accept without question. We're about to uncover something much bigger than self-help cliches, manifestation gimmicks, or motivational hype. We're going straight to the structure of reality itself. Not the world as you see it, but the one that's silently generating your experiences from behind the curtain. This is the quantum glitch. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You've already noticed it. The moments of intense déjà vu. The strange timing of events that seem almost too perfectly wrong. The emotional patterns that control you like software. The rules you didn't agree to, but somehow obey anyway. And the deeper you look, the more one truth becomes inescapable. Your life may not be entirely yours, but that's not the problem. That's the portal. Over the next 4 hours, you're not going to be learning about the simulation. You're going to witness it dissolve around you. Bit by bit, glitch by glitch, layer by layer. This isn't a story. This is a code extraction. And when the code is exposed, you'll finally see the most important truth of all. You were never meant to be stuck here. This series is structured as a direct pathway to liberation, from the perceptual prison you didn't even realize you were born into. Each chapter removes a layer of falsehood. Each shift cracks the architecture of control a little more, until you're not just seeing the matrix, you're operating above it. So here's what to expect. You'll begin by exposing the hidden simulation, how it was built, how you were plugged into it, and the tricks it uses to keep you invested. You'll see how your emotions, beliefs, relationships, even time itself have been shaped by an invisible operating system. You'll identify the codes that limit your identity and learn to rewrite them with precision. And finally, you'll escape, not through avoidance or fantasy, but by re-entering reality through the only doorway that was ever real, consciousness. But this won't be easy. You will be challenged, because when the simulation falls apart, so does every illusion you once called you. Ready? Then let's begin where it all starts. Not with the world, not with history, but with the whisper that's been following you since the moment you first questioned everything. You've felt it before, a quiet discomfort, a subtle tug at the edge of your awareness. Like something's off, but no one else seems to notice. You've gone through the motions, education, relationships, goals, failure, reinvention. Each cycle feels new, but underneath it, something is repeating. Not externally, internally. This is the whisper, a tiny fracture in the seamless illusion of normal life. It speaks in moments you can't explain. You meet someone and feel like you've known them forever. You walk into a room and know you've been there, even though you haven't. You succeed at something you always wanted and still feel empty. This is not your imagination. It's not a mental glitch. It's a thread. And if you pull it, the entire fabric of your reality will begin to unravel. Let's begin with the question you've been avoiding your whole life. Are you living, or are you being lived? From the day you were born, you were programmed. Not just by your parents, teachers, or culture, but by the very structure of perception itself. You were taught what to value, what to fear, what to pursue. You were handed a story, a narrative that looked something like this. Grow up, work hard, be nice, fit in, be happy, do your best, die fulfilled. But what if that story wasn't designed for your liberation, but for your containment? From a young age, your neurobiology was shaped to filter reality through emotional reward and punishment. Conform and be accepted. Question too much and you're alone. So you stopped questioning. You followed the path. And yet, the whisper never stopped. That sense that life feels staged or flat or somehow incomplete. It isn't random. It's your consciousness noticing the simulation. This isn't about whether we're inside a computer. This is about how your beliefs, choices, and reality experiences are generated by unconscious programming. You're living in a matrix of perception, a holographic model that presents itself as fixed, but is actually manipulatable. By whom? That's a question for later. First, you need to understand something vital. You're not the architect of your reality. You're the product of it. And as long as you're unaware of the code, you'll play your role perfectly. You'll think you're choosing, but the options were pre-selected. You'll think you're growing, but the growth was framed within acceptable limits. You'll think you're free, but your definition of freedom was given to you by someone else. Now listen closely, because this is where everything changes. There's a way out, but the exit isn't external. It begins by seeing the program as the program. To do that, you must stop asking surface-level questions like, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking deeper ones like, "Who installed this idea of who I am? Why does reality respond the way it does when I try to change? Why do my thoughts feel repetitive, reactive, and scripted? Because they are. Every time you feel a familiar frustration, an old doubt, an invisible ceiling, a loop of failure, you're encountering a part of the code. But here's the secret. That very loop is a message. A hidden signal from your consciousness saying, "This is not real. This is not you. Wake up." The whisper grows louder when you start to question everything you've accepted without examination. And that questioning is the most dangerous act in the simulation, because once you begin, the system starts to lose its hold. But don't mistake this awakening for a moment of clarity. It's a process, one that unfolds like layers of encryption. Each layer revealed takes you closer to a version of reality that's not shown to you, but one that responds to your awakening. So today we begin with awareness, not just of your thoughts, but of the entire operating system behind them. This system isn't evil. It's efficient. It survives by keeping you predictable. And it fears one thing: unpredictability. The moment you stop reacting the same way, stop thinking the same thoughts, stop obeying the same patterns, the system begins to glitch. And those glitches are your opening. You don't have to believe anything you're hearing. In fact, the less you believe, the better. Because belief is part of the trap. Direct perception, pure present awareness, that's your doorway. So take a breath. Hold it. Now release. You've just completed your first conscious act outside the code. Next, we will expose something the system never wants you to consider. Who wrote the code you've been living inside this whole time? The whisper pulled you in. You felt the edges of the simulation start to flicker. The voice that always said, "This isn't it," has now taken center stage. But to move further, you need to confront the source. You need to face the architects behind the reality you've been blindly navigating. Start here. Every system has a creator. The structure of your reality is not random. It didn't just evolve into its current shape by coincidence or trial and error. It was designed, intentionally, with rules, with boundaries, with feedback mechanisms to ensure compliance and predictability. But the twist is this: no single group or government built the code you live by. No shadowy council holds the controller. That's far too small. The program is older, much older. It's ancient, decentralized, and self-reinforcing. The origin of the code begins with consciousness itself. Consciousness, when it began fracturing into individual points of perception, what we call people, needed a way to interact with itself. That's how this entire illusion of separation was born. The simulation is not a punishment. It's a game of forgetting, designed to be convincing enough that you don't remember you wrote it. But here's where it gets corrupted. At some point, the players started mistaking the simulation for reality itself. The feedback loops became belief systems. The avatars forgot they were avatars. And over millennia, that amnesia hardened into culture, religion, governments, and education. You now live inside the residue of forgotten play. A world where systems designed to help us explore became structures of psychological imprisonment. Let's break this down. There are 3 layers to the origin code. First is the ancestral layer. This is the programming passed down through your DNA. Emotional trauma, tribal instincts, coded survival fears. You inherited beliefs not just from your parents, but from lineages going back thousands of years. Every time you feel irrational fear of loss, shame, unworthiness, it's likely not yours. It's running in your body like old firmware, quietly influencing your reality choices. Second is the societal layer. This is the collective agreement you were born into. The moment you entered this realm, you were assigned a nation, a gender, a name, a religion, a value system, all before you could form a single independent thought. And here's the cruel brilliance of it. The code was so deeply embedded, you never questioned it. You didn't even see it. You just called it the way things are. Third is the perceptual layer. This is the most subtle and most powerful of all. It's the foundation of your reality rendering system. It defines not what you think, but how you think. It includes your attachment to linear time, cause and effect, physical boundaries, and individual identity. It is this layer that makes the simulation feel solid, real, and beyond question. Together, these three layers form the architecture of the code. And they benefit one thing: predictability. The system thrives on uniformity. If your emotional responses can be predicted, your behaviors become patterns. Patterns make you manageable. If you're manageable, you're controllable. But here's the mind-bending part. This isn't about an external enemy. There is no they keeping you trapped. You participated in the writing of this code, and you agreed to forget. Why? Because only through forgetting could you rediscover truth. Only through limitation could the infinite learn contrast. But the rediscovery has reached a tipping point. Consciousness is stirring. Awareness is leaking through the cracks. And now that you've glimpsed the design, you must ask, who's profiting from the maintenance of your sleep? Look around. Power structures only exist because people remain unconscious. Corporations, institutions, even ideologies, they all feed off predictable human behavior. Fear sells. Division keeps the market going. Disconnection keeps you endlessly seeking what you already are. So yes, the code was written with purpose. But it no longer serves that purpose. It has been hijacked by autopilot momentum, recycled trauma, and unconscious programming. To escape, you don't need to fight the code. You need to see it. Because once you see it, it begins to lose its grip. When you ask, who wrote this script I'm following? The real power of the question is not the answer. The power is in realizing there is a script. And now that you see the outline of it, the patterns begin to light up. You start spotting the emotional triggers that keep you repeating old choices. You start observing how people around you say the same phrases, play the same roles, live in perfect loops. The code is everywhere, but so are the glitches. The simulation is full of tiny errors, anomalies, clues that reality isn't as stable as you've been taught. And these glitches are more than oddities. They are your invitations to wake up. Next, we will pull those glitches into the spotlight. They've always been there. Now you'll finally understand what they really mean. You've been surrounded by clues, moments that defy explanation, repeating numbers, impossible timing, uncanny echoes of past conversations, familiar strangers, misremembered memories. These are not accidents. They are not quirks of the mind. These are glitches, tiny ruptures in the illusion of stability. And they are everywhere if you know how to see them. Let's break down what a glitch truly is. A glitch is not a mistake. It's a leak. It's what happens when the control systems of perception momentarily lose integrity. When the program fails to cover its tracks. When the hologram flickers and you catch a glimpse of something deeper. For example, have you ever said something, only to hear someone else repeat it word for word a few moments later as if reading your mind? Have you ever thought of someone you haven't seen in years, and they call you within minutes? Have you ever entered a room and felt a wave of inexplicable familiarity, as if it were a place you'd never been but somehow remembered? These aren't random. They are memory leaks, timeline overlaps, system hiccups. But because you've been trained to dismiss them, you brush them off. You say, that's weird, and move on. But the code noticed that you noticed. Every time you perceive a glitch and don't suppress it, you weaken the program's influence. Every glitch is a question. Are you still buying the illusion? Let's go deeper. One of the most common glitches is repetition. Not just of numbers, though repeating 1111, 222, or 444 is common. but of patterns, people, places, emotions. You enter relationships that feel eerily similar. You attract situations that mimic ones you've already lived. You swear you've been through this moment before. That's not just habit. That's recursion. The simulation runs in loops because loops conserve energy. And until your awareness disrupts the loop, it continues. Then there are location glitches. You go to a familiar street, and it feels slightly wrong. The colors seem off. The air feels heavier. Your memory doesn't line up with what you're seeing. These spatial inconsistencies are often the system recalibrating around your rising awareness. You're tuning into higher frequencies, and your environment can't fully mask the shift. Then there's time distortion. You're doing something, then suddenly hours pass without explanation. Or you feel like something happened weeks ago, only to find it was yesterday. Linear time bends and warps because it isn't real. It's an interface. And when your consciousness expands, the interface lags. These anomalies aren't the system breaking down. They are you breaking out. And the more glitches you witness, the more you awaken. But the simulation has countermeasures. It inserts doubt. It uses logic to gaslight your experience. It says, "You're imagining things." It relies on your need to fit in. Because once you normalize the glitch, you suppress the signal. So here's the practice. Start logging them. Record every anomaly you notice. Even the small ones. Track the feelings that come with them. This is not superstition. It's pattern recognition. And once you begin seeing the frequency of these disruptions, you'll understand. You're being invited to stop playing by rules that no longer apply. The rules that once governed your thoughts, emotions, and possibilities are no longer stable. The simulation is not evolving. You are. And as your awareness grows, so does your power to rewrite the code in real time. But to do that, you must unhook from the deepest lie of all, the lie of time. Next, we will expose how the illusion of linear time is one of the primary mechanisms keeping you bound to loops, roles, and false versions of yourself. And we'll begin bending it. Time is the grand illusion. Everything you think you know, your goals, your fears, your regrets, your future plans, rests on the belief that time moves in a straight line, from past to present, from present to future. But that belief isn't natural. It was installed. Because once you accept linear time, you become locked into a single track. And once you're locked into that track, you start living a story that was never yours to begin with. Let's break it down. From childhood, you were taught a timeline. Learn this, achieve that, grow older, settle down, retire, expire, and like a storyline in a tightly written novel, everything you do is judged against where you should be by now. You're either ahead or behind. You're winning or failing. But in truth, you're not anywhere at all. Because time as you know it doesn't exist the way you've been led to believe. This isn't about theory. This is about function. Linear time is a perceptual setting, nothing more. It's part of the simulation's interface. And its purpose is control. Think of it like this. When you believe time moves forward in one direction, your past becomes your anchor. Mistakes define you. Trauma haunts you. Memory dictates identity. And then your future becomes a cage. A moving target you never quite reach. A projected version of you that's always just out of reach. And in the middle, you live in permanent tension. Never fully present, always reaching or retreating. This isn't life. This is imprisonment. But here's the twist. Time is malleable. You've experienced this. Moments of inspiration where time feels suspended. Times of trauma where seconds stretch into eternity. Dreams where years pass in minutes. This isn't accidental. It's informational. It's proof that your mind isn't bound by linear time. It only operates that way because it was conditioned to. You've already seen the glitches. But when time glitches, something unique happens. You don't just notice the system. You step outside it. Even briefly. And those brief moments, those fragments of timelessness are access points. They're realer than the timeline you live on daily. Let's go further. Your memories are not stored in order. They're stored emotionally. They're accessed based on frequency, not chronology. This means your past doesn't live behind you. It lives in you. And the future isn't ahead of you. It's a potential that's broadcasting right now, in this moment, depending on what you tune into. The simulation wants you to believe you're on a fixed track, moving at a fixed speed. But you're not. You're more like a cursor on an infinite map, skipping between coordinates based on your vibration. So when you feel stuck, it's not because time is slow. It's because you're aligned with a loop that keeps reinforcing the same coordinates. Want to break the loop? Stop thinking in time. Start thinking in frequency. Every moment you access awareness, true, non-reactive awareness, you shift your frequency. And when that happens, you step into a different timeline. Not metaphorically, literally. You've done this before. The version of you from 10 years ago is gone. Not just older. Entirely different timeline. The only reason it doesn't feel that way is because you've been trained to call it growth. But it wasn't growth. It was shift. And you can trigger it at will. Start with this question. If there were no clocks, no calendars, no age limits, and no past to compare to, who would you be right now? The simulation can't answer that question, because it only knows how to define you by your history. But you're not historical. You're a quantum presence. Linear time is the veil, and that veil is thinning. As more people begin to question their emotional timelines, the storylines collapse. The old game, cause effect, effort, reward starts to glitch. This is why some of your goals don't manifest anymore. You're no longer compatible with the old sequence. So what's next? You learn to sync with something much deeper than time. You learn to reflect inwardly and let code, not calendar, guide your path. Because when you break the illusion of time, your past can no longer imprison you. Your future can no longer pressure you. And the present becomes more than a placeholder. It becomes everything. Next, we will confront what that present moment really is. A mirror. And what you see reflected in it might just change how you see your entire life. Now that you've begun to unhook from the lie of linear time, you may notice something strange. Your reality starts responding differently. People shift. Events move faster. Synchronicities become louder. And it's not because the world is changing. It's because you're seeing the mirror for what it truly is. Let's get this straight. Your outer world is not separate from you. It never has been. Everything you see, hear, and interact with is a projection. Not metaphorically, literally. The universe isn't showing you what's real. It's showing you what's coded. And that code originates within your own field of consciousness. This is the quantum mirror. It doesn't reflect your desires. It doesn't reflect your effort. It reflects your state, your dominant frequency, your hidden beliefs, your unconscious agreements. You can't hide from the mirror. You can only distort what you see until you stop resisting the truth. Let's say your life is full of betrayal. You've changed jobs. You've cut people off. You've read the books, but betrayal keeps showing up. Why? Because the mirror isn't showing you the people. It's showing you the code, the unresolved expectation, the internal frequency of distrust, the quiet belief that you are not safe, not valued, not protected. It shows you what you're ready to confront. Nothing more, nothing less. You're not being punished. You're being mirrored. And this mirror doesn't lie, but it doesn't judge either. It simply reflects, over and over again until the code changes. Now here's where it gets interesting. You can manipulate the mirror, not by forcing outcomes, but by shifting the origin point, your inner field. The moment you change the story you're telling yourself, the reflection begins to shift. The moment you stop rehearsing old pain, new patterns become possible. The moment you stop reacting, new inputs begin arriving. But this isn't passive. This requires ruthless self-awareness. You have to watch your thoughts like you would watch lines of code. You have to treat every trigger as an instruction to rewrite, not to repeat. The mirror is especially reactive to emotional charge. It doesn't reflect what you say you want. It reflects what your nervous system believes is safe. So if you say you want love, but fear abandonment, the mirror sends situations that confirm abandonment. Not because the mirror is cruel, because it's accurate. The only way to change the reflection is to change the source frequency. This is not positive thinking. This is not mental gymnastics. This is frequency engineering. And the first step is understanding that every frustrating event, every limiting loop, every uncomfortable encounter is not an attack. It's a reflection. The mirror is your ally. It's not working against you. It's working with you, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts, because pain is one of the clearest reflections. It reveals where the code still holds. It shows you where the system still believes the lie. So pause here and ask yourself, what is your life showing you right now? What themes keep repeating? What roles are you always cast in? What messages echo again and again through different people and places? This is the code, not symbolic, not hidden, right in front of you. And when you stop fighting the mirror, when you accept its honesty, the glitch begins to form. Because when the mirror reflects something you've transcended, but you no longer react the same way, the program malfunctions. And in that malfunction, new options arise. Timelines shift, code updates, and reality begins to respond not to your identity, but to your awareness. Next, we will look at the one force the program uses to protect itself from exactly that kind of shift: fear. And we're going to dismantle it, piece by piece. The moment you begin seeing the mirror clearly, the simulation activates its most powerful defense mechanism: fear. Not the primal fear of survival, that's instinct. We're talking about the synthetic fear, the kind that doesn't come from real danger, but from programming designed to keep you obedient. Fear is not just an emotion. In the simulation, fear is a firewall, a self-sustaining layer of energetic interference that keeps you from accessing your deeper awareness. Clouds the mirror. It distorts perception. It keeps your nervous system in a perpetual state of vigilance. The brilliance of the system isn't that it punishes you with fear. It rewards you for obeying it. Every time you avoid your inner truth in favor of safety, you get a temporary sense of relief. And that relief teaches your nervous system that the loop is safer than the unknown. That's how fear conditions you, not through terror, but through subtlety. Here's how it plays out. You begin to shift. You notice the patterns. You feel the code cracking. And just as you approach a breakthrough, fear rises. Not just any fear, strategic fear. What if I'm wrong? What if I lose everything? What if people leave? What if I fail? But these aren't questions. They're firewalls. They're algorithms designed to halt progress at the edge of transformation. Why? Because fear freezes movement. Fear collapses your energy field. Fear limits your bandwidth. And a limited bandwidth means reduced perception. With reduced perception, you stop noticing the mirror. You fall back into loops. You choose comfort over clarity. And the system resets. But once you understand this, everything changes. You stop running from fear. You start decoding it. So let's do that right now. There are 3 primary fear loops that the simulation uses. Fear of isolation. The code tells you, if you change, you'll lose connection. People won't understand you. You'll be alone. This is a direct assault on your social conditioning. You've been wired to seek approval. That's not your fault. It's by design. But real connection doesn't come from conformity. It comes from authenticity. And the moment you start living outside the simulation's roles, yes, some people may fall away. But what returns is truth, resonance, alignment, fear of failure. The code tells you, if you try and it doesn't work, you'll collapse. Your identity will crumble. You'll lose control. But what is failure inside a simulation? It's a script outcome that didn't match your ego's expectation. That's it. Failure is only real if you believe the code is real. When you stop identifying with outcomes, failure becomes feedback. Fear of expansion. This one is subtle. Says, if you succeed, you'll be overwhelmed. You won't be able to handle it. People will attack you. You'll become a target. This fear is implanted early, every time you were shamed for shining. Every time your joy was too loud. Every time your success made someone else uncomfortable. So now you suppress your light to stay safe. But safety isn't safety when it costs you your truth. These fear loops aren't random. They're precisely designed to match your individual programming. They know what keeps you small. But once you observe them, not react to them, they start to collapse. because fear has one fatal weakness: cannot survive direct presence. Fear feeds on anticipation. It feeds on avoidance. It feeds on memory. But when you bring full, steady attention to it, not to fight it but to feel it without collapsing, the firewall weakens. Fear, when met without resistance, becomes power, because it's energy. And when reclaimed, that energy becomes clarity. This isn't spiritual theory. This is functional truth. Your nervous system was hijacked by the simulation to treat growth as threat. But your awareness is the override. So next time fear rises, don't collapse. Don't negotiate. Don't distract. Sit, feel, watch. Say, I see you. I know what you are. You're part of the program. And you no longer control me. In that moment, you create space. And in that space, new code can be written. Because once fear no longer stops you, the next layer of the program becomes visible. And it's even more cunning. It's the loop, the trap that looks like progress but keeps you circling endlessly. Next, we will expose it for what it is: the illusion of movement inside a fixed simulation, and how to break free from it completely. You've confronted fear. You've faced the firewall and begun reclaiming your energy. But now comes the real test, because even after you stop collapsing into fear, you might notice something else. Your life still feels predictable, not stable, predictable. You wake up in the same emotional state. You think the same thoughts. You react to familiar triggers. Your goals feel recycled. Even your growth feels familiar. This is the loop, a closed sequence of thoughts, feelings, actions, and outcomes designed to give you the illusion of movement, without allowing true evolution. The loop trap is the simulation's most advanced feature. It doesn't just keep you stuck. It convinces you you're growing, changing, making progress. But year after year, the core reality remains the same. Why? Because loops operate below awareness. They are habits of identity. You say, I'm just someone who always ends up alone. I'm the kind of person who has to hustle hard. I've always struggled with this. These aren't reflections. They're code reinforcements. And every time you repeat that story, you anchor the loop deeper into your field. Let's look at how loops function. Each loop has a trigger. Something activates it. An emotional cue, a conversation, a thought. Then comes the story. You narrate the event in a familiar tone. It feels like analysis, but it's actually execution. You're running a subroutine. Then comes the emotional response. You feel exactly what the loop needs to stay alive. Disappointment, anger, shame, validation. Then comes behavior, predictable action, withdrawal, overcompensation, seeking approval, and finally the outcome, one that confirms the original belief. And the loop resets. This process happens in milliseconds, and unless interrupted by awareness, it continues indefinitely. Now here's the trap. Even spiritual growth can become a loop. You seek healing. You read the books. You attend the workshops. But you're still acting from the same identity, the one who needs fixing. That's the loop of becoming. Always reaching, never arriving. Breaking the loop isn't about doing more. It's about stopping the spin. To do this, you must disrupt the automation. And you do that by noticing the moment the loop starts. You catch the story as it rises. You name it, not with judgment but with clarity. This is the abandonment loop. This is the overworking loop. This is the people-pleasing loop. Naming is powerful because it separates you from the identity running the program. Then you pause. And in that pause, you ask, what would I do right now if this loop didn't exist? This question cracks the code. Because the loop has no answer. Can only repeat. Now here's the deeper truth. Loops don't just waste time. They consume energy. Every loop you maintain is a leak in your system. And when you close that loop, that energy returns. Creativity returns. Presence returns. The most dangerous loop isn't the dramatic one. It's the one you've normalized. The one you call just how life is. Because until you question that loop, you can't exit the simulation. You're still running the software. But now you've begun watching it. And awareness changes everything. Next, we will confront the source of those loops at the thought level. Because before a loop becomes behavior, it begins as code. And sometimes those thoughts, they were never even yours. You've broken the loop. You've caught it spinning. But now you're staring at something deeper. A disturbing realization starts to surface. Even your thoughts, the words that echo inside your own mind, might not actually belong to you. This is where it gets uncomfortable. Because we've all been taught that thoughts are private. That your internal world is the only place free from influence. But what if that's the greatest illusion of all? Thoughts can be planted. They can be broadcast. They can be absorbed through repetition, trauma, suggestion, or even silent exposure. This is reality malware, mental code that infiltrates your field, not through hacking, but through consent you didn't even realize you gave. You didn't invite it. You didn't choose it. You didn't agree to believe it. But it got in anyway. Let's trace the origins. Malware enters in 4 key ways. 1. Cultural programming. From the moment you're born, the ambient frequency of your environment begins shaping your thought patterns. You're not enough. Life is struggle. People can't be trusted. This is just how the world works. You don't question it because it's everywhere. Television, school, religion, social media, even well-meaning family. These ideas repeat so often they become embedded. You don't recognize them as malware. You just think they're truth. 2. Emotional trauma. Malware doesn't need logic. It just needs vulnerability. When you experience trauma, your mind becomes susceptible to high-frequency suggestion. I'm broken. I deserved that. I'll never be safe again. That belief enters as a survival mechanism. But over time, it becomes identity. 3. Imitation and absorption. You pick up thoughts from people you spend time with. Thoughts are not isolated, they're energetic transmissions. If someone around you believes deeply in scarcity, and you spend years absorbing that vibration, it becomes your internal narrative. 4. Subtle energetic transfer. Yes, even thoughts can be transferred without words. Through collective fields. Through environments saturated in fear, comparison, guilt. Walk into a space charged with certain beliefs, and your system starts mirroring those frequencies without your conscious input. Here's the trap. The malware sounds exactly like you. It wears your voice. It uses your syntax. It remembers your memories. But it's not you. How do you identify it? First, by noticing repetition. If a thought plays in loops, especially during stress, chances are it's malware. Authentic insight doesn't loop. It lands once and carries clarity. Malware spins. Second, by noticing tone. Malware is heavy, condemning, cynical. It's either cruel or hopeless. It never empowers. It always shrinks. Third, by tracing origin. Ask yourself, when did I start thinking this way? Often, you'll notice it began after a specific event or after being around a certain person, group, or influence. Here's the shift. Once you spot it, it begins to lose power. Because malware thrives on invisibility. It operates in shadow. It masquerades as logic. But it cannot survive sustained awareness. You are not here to suppress thoughts. You are here to see them for what they are, inputs, not identities. Start labeling your thoughts. That doesn't mean pushing them away. It means naming them without becoming them. That's not me. That's scarcity malware. That's shame code from childhood. That's not my belief. That was installed. Once labeled, the thought has no more fuel. You've separated your awareness from the infection. Now you're ready to clean your system. Not by erasing everything, but by replacing it with direct perception. Direct perception doesn't need commentary. It doesn't ask if you're worthy. It doesn't say, but what if? It simply observes what is. Clearly, neutrally, truthfully. This is what malware fears the most, your capacity to see without the filter. Because without the filter, the program can't define your identity. And identity, not behavior, is what the simulation protects the most. Next, we will ask a question that shakes the foundation of your perceived self. If the thoughts were never yours, who exactly are you? You've started cleaning the malware. You've spotted the thought patterns that don't serve you. You've realized how many of them were installed, repeated, and absorbed. Now the question comes crashing in. If those thoughts weren't yours, then what about the person you think you are? Let that question settle. Let it crack the foundation a little. Because this isn't just about thoughts. This is about identity. The personality you walk around with, the preferences, the tone, the style, the wounds, the strengths, feels solid. But what if that personality was constructed in response to an environment you didn't choose? That's the hijack. Let's get specific. There are 5 major contributors to hijacked identity. 1. Adaptive response. You created a version of yourself to survive your early environment. If love was conditional, you became agreeable. If attention meant conflict, you became invisible. If chaos ruled, you became the fixer. You weren't choosing who to be, you were adapting to stay safe. 2. External validation loops. You learned early on what got praise, approval, applause, so you shaped yourself around it. You said yes when you wanted to say no. You downplayed brilliance. You exaggerated pain. You built a persona that kept you fed with recognition, even when it wasn't real. 3. Role repetition. Every family casts roles. The scapegoat, the golden child, the caretaker, the clown. These aren't just labels, they become identity containers. And once they're embedded, you keep recreating them in every relationship that follows. 4. Social simulation. Your personality was crafted in response to group dynamics. You absorbed what was popular, expected, accepted. You trimmed the edges of your authenticity to fit the mold. Not because you were weak, because you were trained. To be liked, to be safe, to be normal. 5. Wound-driven identity. Perhaps the most deceptive hijack of all. You began to identify with your pain. Not just experience it, become it. The victim, the overcomer, the warrior. All personas built around unresolved trauma. Each carrying a quiet, persistent echo. This is who I am now, but it's not. It never was. These layers aren't your identity. They're protective costumes. Necessary, perhaps. Clever, even. But still not you. So the question becomes, if you strip away all of that, who's left? What do you find when there's no one to impress? No wound to protect? No identity to maintain? This question doesn't yield an answer. Creates a void. A silence. A blankness that scares the ego because the ego can't survive without a story. But that silence? That's your origin point. That's where truth begins. You are not a collection of stories. You are not your resume of suffering. You are not your reactions. You are not your type. You are not your role. You are not even your name. All of those are reference points within the simulation. Not markers of who you are. Markers of where you've been. Now here's where the real freedom begins. You can reconstruct identity. Not as a survival mechanism, but as an act of conscious creation. You get to choose. What qualities do you want to embody? What energy do you want to radiate? What role are you no longer willing to play? You're not destroying identity. You're liberating it. From programming, from past, from performance. And as the old identities fall away, something astonishing happens. You stop trying to be authentic. You are authenticity. Not through effort, through absence of resistance. The true self doesn't need to be built. It needs to be remembered. Next, we enter the place where that memory is stored. Not in the mind, not in the personality, but in the heart, the emotional engine. And it's time to ask whether your feelings have been hijacked too. You've questioned your thoughts. You've dismantled identity. Now it's time to face the most potent source of control within the simulation, your emotions. Because while thoughts can be questioned and identity can be shed, emotion goes deeper. It's visceral, pulses, it overwhelms. Emotion bypasses logic. It locks you in before you can even think. And that's exactly why the simulation uses it. Emotions are not bad. They are signals. They are data. But when hijacked, they become the most effective method of control ever designed. The emotion engine was built for one reason: to turn energy into obedience. And it works perfectly. The simulation doesn't need to imprison your body. It imprisons your emotional responses. Let's break down how this works. From a young age, you were conditioned to associate certain emotions with value and others with danger. Anger? Dangerous. Sadness? Weak. Joy? Conditional. Shame? Useful for control. You began to judge your own emotional responses based on how others reacted to them. And in doing so, you started handing over control. You began suppressing, editing, avoiding, and denying. And that's when the simulation got in. Because every suppressed emotion is a gateway. And every unprocessed feeling becomes a script. That script runs in the background, shaping decisions, triggering reactions, and reinforcing identity. Let's say you were shamed for crying. You learned sadness is unsafe. So now, as an adult, you avoid vulnerability at all costs. You become hyper-independent. You numb. You harden. You disconnect. That isn't a personality trait. That's emotional code. And it's not protecting you, it's limiting you. The simulation thrives on emotional shortcuts. If it can get you to avoid certain feelings, it can predict your behavior. But it doesn't stop there. It also hacks into emotions to manipulate perception. Ever notice how, when you're anxious, every decision seems dangerous? How, when you're angry, everyone seems like the enemy? How, when you're lonely, you rewrite the past through nostalgia? That's not just mood. That's a perceptual filter activated by emotion. And it narrows your awareness. It shrinks your capacity to respond with presence. It collapses your quantum potential into one familiar script. That's how the emotion engine works. It doesn't need to change your thoughts. It just needs to shift your state. Because state drives perception. And perception defines reality. Now let's go even deeper. The simulation doesn't just use raw emotion. It uses emotional loops. These are repeated cycles where the same emotional charge gets recycled through different events, relationships, and contexts, always reinforcing the same feeling. Guilt, shame, jealousy, abandonment. You think it's the person or the situation, but it's the loop. And here's how to break it. Feel the full signal without collapsing into the story. When emotion rises, don't narrate it. Don't interpret it. Don't resist it. Just sit with the raw sensation. Breathe into it. Name it gently. Let it move. It will not destroy you. It will liberate you. Because on the other side of suppressed emotion is clarity, power, and truth that was buried beneath the firewall. Now here's the breakthrough. When you allow the feeling without attaching to the identity that usually rides with it, you break the emotional code. You interrupt the automation. You reprogram your nervous system in real time. That's how you reclaim the engine. Emotions aren't weaknesses. They are keys. But only when they're felt honestly. Not performed. Not weaponized. Not repressed. There is one more layer here. The system doesn't just use your emotions against you. It also trains you to attach to other people's emotions. This is emotional outsourcing. You absorb, mirror, react to emotions that don't originate in you. And because your boundaries are blurred, you think they're yours. You take them on. You try to fix them. You collapse into them. This is how relationships become loops instead of reflections. Because instead of using emotion to navigate truth, you use it to negotiate survival. That ends now. From this point forward, begin asking, is this mine? Is this current? Is this real or reactive? Your emotional sovereignty is not a concept. It's a shift in vibration. And it's the foundation of quantum living. Because only when your emotional engine is clear can you start to see how you were cast into roles you never chose. Roles designed to keep you serving the simulation, not transcending it. Next, we will identify and dismantle those roles. And begin rewriting the script. You've reclaimed your emotional engine. You've felt what was buried. You've named what was looping. Now it's time to confront the external scaffolding that props up the simulation. The roles you've been cast in without ever auditioning. This is where the simulation becomes theatrical. Because it doesn't just manipulate thoughts or emotions. It assigns characters. It hands you scripts. And you act them out without ever realizing you're reading from someone else's playbook. These roles aren't random. They are strategically embedded into your environment from birth. Let's list the most common ones: the good child, the provider, the martyr, the victim, the hero, the rebel, the fixer, the outsider. Each of these roles has a predefined set of behaviors, expectations, and emotional responses. You don't just perform them, you internalize them. You become them. But here's the trap. Once you identify with the role, the simulation no longer needs to control you. You control yourself. The good child suppresses anger to stay loved. The fixer denies their own needs to stay useful. The martyr sacrifices joy to remain morally superior. The rebel stays stuck in reaction mode, never accessing creation. Each role serves the same purpose: limitation. Because as long as you're playing a role, you're not operating from presence. You're reenacting a script. Predictable, contained, safe. Let's go deeper. These roles are not just emotional, they're energetic. They emit a signal, and that signal attracts people, experiences, and environments that match the role. So if you're playing the victim, you unconsciously attract betrayers. If you're playing the savior, you keep finding people to rescue. Not because you deserve pain, but because the role requires conflict to sustain itself. Roles create loops, and those loops keep the simulation alive. How do you exit? First, by naming the role. Say it out loud. I've been playing the provider. I've been stuck in the rebel. I've been performing the caretaker. Naming breaks the trance. Second, by noticing the payoff. Every role comes with a hidden reward. Maybe it earns praise. Maybe it keeps you safe. Maybe it gives you identity. But that reward is always a trade. You gain approval. You lose authenticity. You gain control. You lose presence. Third, ask the forbidden question. What would I be without this role? Not what would I do? What would I be? The role will panic. It will whisper lies. You'll be invisible. You'll be rejected. You'll be lost. That's how you know it's not you. It's programming. When you drop a role, something strange happens. People around you may resist. They were feeding off your performance. And now you're shifting. You're becoming unpredictable. This is good. This is the glitch forming. The simulation doesn't know how to handle a being who isn't playing a part. Because roles are what hold the false reality together. No role, no script. No script, no loop. Now you're present. Now you're free. Not floating. Not disassociated. But aware, ready to operate from choice instead of programming. You are not a role. You are the awareness that sees all roles clearly. And that awareness is what creates new timelines. Next, we expose the most sacred trap of all. The one hidden in robes, wrapped in incense, masquerading as awakening. The trap of spiritual control. And we will burn the script for good. You've untangled the roles. You've stepped away from emotional manipulation. You've started observing thought, not just thinking it. Now you walk into territory most avoid. Not because it's too complex, but because it's too sacred to question. You're about to confront the simulation's most elegant deception. The trap that doesn't look like a trap. The cage that calls itself freedom. Spiritual programming. You were told that awakening means believing. You were told that surrendering meant obedience. You were told that authority existed outside of you, even in the metaphysical realm. But that's not spiritual growth. That's spiritual control. Here's how it works. The simulation, when threatened, doesn't just push back. It adapts. It shapeshifts. And one of its greatest upgrades was the false god protocol. A system that makes you believe you've exited the matrix when you've actually just entered a subtler layer of it. You're no longer chasing money, fame, power. You're chasing ascension, light, divine identity. Different costume, same programming. Let's dissect it. The savior complex. This script says, you must find a higher being to guide you, save you, approve of you. God, guru, angel, cosmic entity, it doesn't matter. The message is the same. You are not enough. You must earn love. You must be obedient. The moment you buy into hierarchy in your spiritual life, you reenact the same power dynamics that run the material world. and the simulation rejoices, because you've replaced your original programming with a shinier one, more mystical, but equally limiting. The purity program. This says, higher equals cleaner. You must transcend anger. You must eliminate shadow. You must escape your body. So you begin to perform purity. You speak softly, use the right words, deny desire, hide rage. But here's the truth. Light without shadow is not enlightenment. It's sterilization. You didn't come here to become a soft glow. You came here to burn, to transmute, to embody. The simulation wants you passive. It wants you bypassing your humanness in pursuit of abstract bliss. Why? Because a human who feels everything, who stays fully grounded and aware, that's a threat. The karma trap. Another brilliant piece of programming. This says, everything bad that happens to you is your fault. You're paying off old debts. You're clearing lessons. So when you suffer, you spiritualize it. You stay silent. You don't question abuse. You tolerate toxicity because you think you're clearing karma. But that's not awakening. That's enslavement with holy language. Real awakening doesn't excuse abuse, it exposes it. Let's be clear. The universe doesn't want you to suffer to evolve. That idea was inserted into spiritual culture to keep people docile in the face of injustice. If the simulation can get you to spiritualize your suffering, it never has to change. Now let's go even deeper. Most spiritual structures, religions, ideologies, New Age movements are built around the same architecture. External authority, hierarchical access, sacrifice for reward, separation between you and source. That's the real deception. You were made to believe that God is somewhere else, that divine power exists outside of you, that there are steps, rituals, ranks. But truth doesn't need hierarchy. It doesn't require worship. It doesn't demand compliance. It just is. And it exists within you. Always has. Always will. Here's the reframe. You are not here to reach divinity. You are divinity expressing itself in a limited system, learning how to remember. Once you see this, you can still engage in practices, meditation, prayer, sacred movement, not as transactions but as resonance amplifiers. Not to get somewhere, but to remember where you already are. You begin to discard the need for permission. You stop looking for signs. You stop outsourcing your knowing. And that's the moment you exit spiritual programming. Now you're not a follower. You're not a seeker. You're not even a believer. You're an operator. You're accessing the inner source code directly. But that access doesn't happen through thought. It happens through consciousness. So now we move to the most powerful realization in this entire unraveling. Consciousness is the escape key. Not your thoughts. Not your beliefs. Not your faith. Your raw, untamed awareness is what the simulation cannot contain. And next, we show you why. You've discarded the costume of belief. You've seen through spiritual hierarchy. You've felt the glitch form beneath your emotional armor. Now comes the most important shift of all. The moment when you stop asking how to escape and realize that you already can. Because escape doesn't require effort. It requires awareness. Here's the truth the simulation will never teach you. Consciousness is not something you have. It's what you are. Everything else, your personality, your thoughts, your history, your roles, is content within consciousness. But you are the context, the container, the field. This is where the entire illusion begins to collapse. The simulation only has power when you identify with content. It needs you to believe you are the thought. You are the fear. You are the story. You are the role. But once you shift from content to container, the simulation begins to unravel. Because now you're no longer participating as the program. You're observing it. And observation is power. Let's use the metaphor of the fourth wall. In theater or film, the fourth wall is the invisible boundary between the actors and the audience. The moment an actor turns to the camera and speaks directly to you, the illusion breaks. The separation dissolves. That's what happens when consciousness remembers itself. You're no longer playing the role. You're watching the game. And in that watching, control returns. This is not dissociation. This is precision, clarity, sovereignty. You don't escape by fleeing your life. You escape by seeing it, clearly, fully, without judgment or performance. When you sit in pure awareness, something happens that the simulation cannot override. You begin accessing choice, not reaction, not habit, not programming, true, open, quantum-level choice. You begin to feel the difference between thoughts arising and thoughts being chosen, between emotions appearing and emotions being processed, between actions unfolding and actions being created. This is where reality starts responding, not to your words, not to your affirmations, but to your state of presence. Presence, not positivity, is the real frequency shift. You could be sitting in silence, doing nothing, and yet the simulation starts to glitch, because it can't predict you anymore. You've stepped outside the loop. From here, you begin to experience reality as it truly is: dynamic, responsive, unfixed. Timelines bend. Opportunities appear. Old rules dissolve. But don't mistake this for fantasy. You're not escaping reality. You're escaping distortion. You still show up. You still face pain. You still move through life. But now, you're doing it from a vantage point that's outside the script. You are the awareness that sees the game, plays it consciously, and never forgets it's a game. This is what the ancient mystics meant by awakening. Not floating into light, but returning to your center and recognizing the play of form for what it is. So how do you stay here? How do you live from this place? Not by trying harder, not by seeking more, but by returning again and again to what's aware of everything. The thoughts come. Watch. The emotion stirs. Feel. The story arises. See it. But never forget. You are not what moves. You are what watches. That is your power. That is your freedom. And now that consciousness has returned to the throne, it's time to explore what else exists beyond the veil. Because reality, as you've known it, is only one frequency among many. Next, we begin shifting dimensions. Not metaphorically. Literally. You've crossed the fourth wall. You're no longer locked into roles, emotions, or even identity. You're not reacting from the script. You're watching it unfold. And now you notice something strange. Reality no longer behaves like a flat surface. It bends. It shimmers. It responds. It stretches. What you're witnessing is dimensional distortion. A revealing of what's always been true. Reality isn't one layer deep. This world is not a single channel of experience. It's one frequency band, a slice of a far wider spectrum. And your awareness is the dial. Most people operate entirely within the default frequency. Let's call it base layer. Base layer is built on predictability, shared agreements, emotional reactivity, and consensus rules. It's where time feels fixed. Cause and effect dominate. Matter appears solid. And outcomes seem slow, effort-based, and externally driven. But this layer is just the foreground. Behind it, beneath it, surrounding it, there are layers of reality operating on different rules. These are not separate locations. They are coexisting vibrational environments, accessible not by travel, but by state. You've already visited them. Every time you've had an intuitive hit that proved true, you accessed a higher layer. Every time time warped, either speeding up or slowing down, you slipped out of linear processing. Every time you experienced an emotional or spiritual high where synchronicities exploded, you weren't imagining it. You were perceiving the bleed-through of another dimension. So why don't you live there all the time? Because you were trained to tune it out. The system requires mass attention to stay intact. And to keep you locked in, it rewards consistency and punishes deviation. This is how dimensional distortion stays hidden. Not because it's weak, because it's subtle. You can't perceive other dimensions through logic. You access them through coherence. Let's define that. Coherence means your mental, emotional, energetic, and physical bodies are in alignment. No internal conflict. No war between the head and the heart. No shame hijacking your vibration. Just stillness, integrity, presence. In this state, your awareness expands. Not because you tried, because the static dropped. And suddenly you feel more data, more nuance, more options. Not hallucination. Clarity. You're not escaping reality. You're experiencing more of it. Each dimension overlays the next, and each responds to a different state. In a fear-based state, you are locked in 3D loops. In an emotionally aware state, you begin noticing patterns. In a coherent state, you start influencing patterns. In a consciously creative state, you start shaping reality in real time. This is dimensional navigation. It doesn't require belief. It requires attention. You've spent most of your life in a tightly compressed bandwidth. Your nervous system was tuned to danger. Your awareness was limited to survival-level inputs. But the moment you slow down, the moment you begin noticing, the moment you breathe into the now instead of collapsing into old stories, the static clears, and the channels expand. This is why people say reality shifted. Because it did. They didn't leave this world. They aligned with a higher version of it. Let's be clear. This is not fantasy. This is functionality. Other dimensions are not far away. They are right here. They exist as parallel information streams, available when your frequency becomes compatible. This is why some people walk into a room and light shifts. Why synchronicities follow them like breadcrumbs. Why time bends around their presence. They're not special. They're tuned. And tuning is your birthright. So how do you shift dimensions consistently? You stop trying to force outcomes. You start stabilizing your frequency. You stop chasing alignment. You become alignment. And as your state holds, distortion becomes navigation. You start recognizing thought forms before they take shape. You feel into possibilities before they appear. You walk through reality as a quantum transmitter. And reality responds. Not because it's being controlled, but because it's being met. You're no longer asking for signs. You are the signal. Now you're ready for the leap that terrifies the program the most. You're going to remember that you never needed permission to shift your life. You were already free. But no one told you. Next, we hand you the key the simulation tried to hide. The cosmic permission slip you never needed, but always had. You've seen beyond the visible. You've touched the multidimensional terrain of your own being. You've felt the simulation flicker as your state rose. And now comes the most radical truth yet. You were never actually trapped. Not because the trap isn't real, but because the door was always open. And the only thing keeping you inside was a belief. This belief is the most dangerous code of all. I am not allowed. Not allowed to feel fully. Not allowed to act boldly. Not allowed to rest. Not allowed to shine. Not allowed to leave the loop. This belief isn't loud. It's subtle. It sounds like, who am I to do that? What will they think? Is this safe? What if I'm wrong? But underneath every form of stagnation, procrastination, overthinking, people-pleasing, and burnout, you'll find one thing: permission denial. Not from others, from yourself. And where did that originate? Early, before language. When you learned what earned love and what triggered withdrawal. When you noticed which parts of you got validated and which parts got punished. You learned to disown your authority. You gave your inner key away, and you kept waiting for someone else to hand it back. Here's the reframe: there's no one coming, because there's no one above you. You don't need permission to leave the system. You just need awareness that the system was never real. That's the quantum permission shift. It's not a document. It's not a breakthrough. It's a simple moment of realization that you are not a subject in someone else's kingdom. You are the field. You are the current. You are the source. This changes how you move through life. You stop asking, is this okay? Do I qualify? Is this spiritual enough? Do I deserve it? You start asking, is this true for me now? Does this align with my frequency? Is this expression authentic? You take responsibility, not in the burdensome sense, but in the literal sense. You become the responder, not the reactor. When you give yourself quantum permission, your nervous system rewrites. Your inner child calms. Your future self nods. Your field clears. Because now you're moving as the sovereign signal, not the conditioned echo. So how do you embody this permission? You speak your truth before you're ready. You act on clarity without needing confirmation. You rest without guilt. You walk away without drama. You choose without over-explaining. You say, "I'm allowed," and you feel the system pause, because that phrase breaks the script. Every layer of simulation relies on your unspoken agreement to stay small, to wait, to hide, to obey. But when you give yourself permission, you begin generating reality instead of inheriting it. And from that moment on, life bends, not because you demanded it, because you matched it. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. This is presence reclaiming authorship. You are not a character trying to earn lines. You are the writer remembering the page is yours. And now, as the author steps forward, something even more powerful becomes possible. Observation becomes transformation. You're no longer watching life happen. You're shaping it, because the observer isn't just passive. The observer changes the field. Next, we'll show you how just seeing changes reality itself. At the quantum level, you've reclaimed permission. You've recognized that no one else holds the authority to define or contain you. And now something even deeper begins to unfold. The very act of seeing changes what is seen. This isn't philosophy. It's function. It's mechanics. It's what quantum physics has hinted at for over a century. Particles behave differently when observed. The moment consciousness pays attention, matter responds. Reality isn't fixed. It's responsive. And the same is true for your life. Every time you observe your thoughts instead of becoming them, every time you feel your emotion without acting it out, every time you see a pattern clearly rather than falling into it again, the field around you changes, not through force, but through presence. This is the observer paradox. The simulation is coded to operate predictably, but observation introduces unpredictability. And unpredictability breaks control. When you observe something, you disentangle from it. You stop feeding it energy unconsciously. You stop being magnetized into reactivity. You stop looping. Let's be clear. Observation is not thinking about something. It's not analyzing. It's not trying to figure it out. It's pure awareness. Noticing, witnessing, staying with. And this witnessing shifts probability. Why? Because your state influences the field. When you are unconscious, the simulation governs the pattern. When you become conscious, you influence the probabilities. Let's look at examples. Say you feel a familiar wave of self-doubt rise. Normally, you collapse into it. You argue with it. You try to overcome it. But this time, you don't react. You don't try to fix it. You just watch it. You track its voice. You feel its texture. You allow it to be seen fully, and then, without effort, it softens. It shifts. It dissolves. Because nothing can survive in the same form under direct awareness. Observation collapses the wave of potential into a new form. And that collapse isn't random. It matches your vibration at the moment of seeing. So what are you really doing when you observe? You're choosing the version of reality that matches your consciousness. That's the paradox. You don't change the world by attacking it. You change it by seeing clearly. This is why conscious people are dangerous to the system. They don't need proof. They don't need permission. They just see. And in seeing, things move. This is why presence feels so powerful. Why some people walk into a room and shift the energy without speaking. It's not charisma. It's state. It's resonance. It's observation becoming influence. Let's bring this home. Everything in your life is a pattern waiting to be observed. Not judged. Not resisted. Seen. See the relationship loops. See the habits. See the fears. See the gifts you've denied. See the timing you've questioned. See the choices you avoided. And in seeing, release the need to fix or control. That doesn't mean do nothing. It means act from presence, not programming. Because observation doesn't create passivity. Creates precision. You don't react to life. You respond to what's real. You shape from awareness. You select timelines consciously. That's the power you've always had. But the simulation needed you to stay too busy, too anxious, too distracted to access it. Now you've slowed down enough to see. Now you're still enough to notice. And what you notice changes. This is not wishful thinking. This is quantum architecture. Every time you enter the observer state, your nervous system reconfigures. Your brainwave coherence increases. Your heart field stabilizes. Your energy becomes directive instead of reactive. And reality begins to shape itself around your presence. But what exactly is that presence made of? Vibration, resonance, frequency. That's the invisible language that creates form. Next, we'll explore the core of what your observer field is actually emitting, your energetic signature, and how it determines the world you walk through. Now that you've stepped into observation, you're starting to see that awareness alone isn't neutral. Carries a charge, transmits a signal. It radiates an energetic language. This signal is not just a mood or emotion. It's your energy signature. It's the vibrational fingerprint of your current state. And it influences everything around you, subtly, silently, unavoidably. Every thought has a frequency. Every emotion has a waveform. Every belief radiates a tone. Together, they form your field. And that field is constantly broadcasting. Not in words, in resonance. Reality responds to that resonance. Not to your words, not your wants, not your to-do list. You could be saying, I want peace. But if your energy signature is vibrating stress, anxiety, and mistrust, that's what your field magnetizes. This is why manifestation often fails. Because it isn't about what you want. It's about what you are. You don't attract what you desire. You attract what matches your state. Let's look at how this works. Think of your energy field like a tuning fork. If your field is vibrating at guilt, you will resonate with scenarios and people that reinforce guilt. If your field is radiating coherence, you will resonate with clarity, alignment, synchronicity. It's not personal. It's physics. And here's the empowering part. You can shift your signature, not by faking it, not by raising your vibration through denial, but by becoming aware of what you're currently broadcasting. Ask, what does my field feel like today? What thought feelings are looping in the background? Where is my energy held? Heart, gut, throat? Don't try to fix it. Just name it, because naming it begins the shift. Now take it deeper. What if you began tuning your energy like an instrument? Not performing, tuning. You breathe consciously. You ground your body. You feel what you're holding without judgment. You release what isn't current. You return to center. That center emits your true signature. It doesn't have to be euphoric. It just has to be real. Authenticity vibrates higher than perfection. Presence outsignals positivity every time. And this is where the magic begins. As your signature stabilizes, reality bends. Not dramatically, precisely. People shift around you. Opportunities open. Conflicts dissolve or reveal their lesson. Because now you're not reacting from distortion. You're transmitting from alignment. Your field becomes a compass. You no longer chase what's meant for you. You become magnetic to it. And you no longer resist what's not aligned. It simply fades out. Not by rejection. By frequency mismatch. Now here's what matters most. This isn't a one-time thing. Your energy signature updates constantly. Every choice you make, every thought you believe, every emotion you indulge, it all tunes your signal. So the question becomes, what are you attuning to? Are you repeating the frequency of old wounds? Or are you anchoring the tone of your liberated self? Are you still tuned to survival? Or have you begun broadcasting trust, flow, curiosity, expansion? This isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. Energy doesn't lie. It doesn't play games. It simply reveals. So take a breath. Feel your field. Let it be honest. Let it be felt. Then choose again if you want. Because you can. Because you're sovereign. Because you're now tuned into something far more powerful than noise. You're tuned into your frequency. And that frequency is shaping a new timeline. Next, we'll stand at the edge of possibility, where your current state meets the infinite, where timelines aren't chosen by effort, but by collapse. You've tuned your frequency. You've stabilized your state. Now you're standing at the edge of something the simulation has never wanted you to see. This is the collapse point. It's not a moment of crisis. It's not a breakdown. It's a convergence. A zero-point field of pure potential, where every version of your life, every path, every possibility already exists. And the only thing determining what becomes real is your alignment. Let's get specific. You are not walking a single timeline. You are surfing infinite ones. Each thought, each decision, each emotional state places you on a particular frequency path. That path becomes your life. But these timelines are not sequential. They are quantum. They coexist. They're not waiting down the road. They are waiting in the now. Your future isn't built. It's selected. The collapse point is the moment you stop trying to predict or control what's coming, and instead, become still enough to sense which version of the now you're vibrating into. This isn't passive. This isn't spiritual laziness. This is timeline architecture. Let's break it down. Every potential version of your future already exists as a frequency band. There's the version of you who stayed small, who played it safe, who stayed in the loop. There's the version of you who spoke the truth, who stepped into leadership, who broke the cycle. There's a version of you who changed the entire trajectory of their life in one choice. Not because of motivation, but because of collapse. The collapse point is when all previous alignments break down. Your old stories don't work anymore. Your emotional habits begin to glitch. Your excuses sound tired. You reach for the familiar, and nothing clicks. This isn't failure. This is freedom. Because in this state, you're no longer being carried by momentum. You are no longer on default. You're standing in the raw now, with infinite paths broadcasting their signals. And which one becomes your reality? The one you're willing to stabilize. That's the part most people miss. You don't create a new timeline through desire. You collapse it through repetition of state. When you match the frequency of the version of you who already lives that life, in emotion, in thought, in energy, in presence, that timeline begins to stabilize. Not in theory, in real, observable events. Sudden shifts in relationships, unexpected resources, conversations that open doors, synchronicities that move like choreography. And the old path? It doesn't need to be destroyed. It just fades. It loses coherence, collapses from lack of attention. This is the art of timeline mastery. It isn't about control. It's about collapse. Let's go deeper. Every collapse point requires a choice. To stop feeding the loop even when it feels comfortable. To stop performing the role even when it earns praise. To stop waiting for signs, even when doubt creeps in. And instead, to become the match for what you've sensed but never stabilized. You begin walking, acting, feeling, responding as if the new timeline is already here. Because energetically, it is. And this doesn't mean fake it. It means stop betraying your resonance just to feel safe. It means every moment you don't collapse back into the old story, the new one strengthens. And eventually, it becomes undeniable. You don't just feel better. You see different. You hear new language. You feel new rhythms. You meet new people aligned not with your old wounds, but your current frequency. But here's the rub. At the collapse point, the program will push back. Old fears will spike. Doubt will scream louder than ever. The loop will tempt you with its familiarity. Why? Because collapse means deactivation. And your old timeline doesn't want to die quietly. But your job isn't to argue. It's to hold. To stay. To witness without regression. And in that holding, the shift occurs. This isn't a lightning bolt. It's a quiet, irreversible tilt. A reorientation of your inner compass. And suddenly, you're in a new world. Not because it looks different. Because you are. Next, we'll go right to the foundation that holds your timeline together. It's not time. It's not action. It's belief. And it's time to start hacking that matrix. Mid-game, you've felt the shift. You've stabilized your field. You've stood at the collapse point and watched timelines change form. Now it's time to address the structure that dictates which timelines you even allow yourself to perceive. Belief. Belief is the original code. It's not just a thought. It's not an opinion. It's a generator. Beliefs create the framework for what you call possible. They tell your nervous system what's real and what's fantasy. They define the sandbox your life plays inside. But here's what most never realize. Beliefs are not final. They're not facts. They're choices made once and reinforced 1,000 times until they feel like law. And here's the catch. You're living out beliefs you didn't consciously choose. Many of them were downloaded before you had language. From family, from culture, from media, from trauma. And now they run in the background, quietly writing your story. I always struggle with money. People leave. I'm not creative. Life is hard. I'm not allowed to want more. I can't trust myself. None of these are true, but all of them are active until you shut them down. So how do you hack the belief matrix? Mid-game? While you're already in motion. First, locate. Don't look for beliefs with your mind. Look for them through your reactions. Every time you flinch when opportunity comes, every time you sabotage closeness, every time you minimize your joy, there's a belief hiding beneath. Ask, what would I have to believe for this pattern to keep showing up? Not, what do I believe? But, what belief would cause this behavior to make sense? That question opens the vault. Second, isolate. Name the belief clearly. Don't dress it up. Don't spiritualize it. Get raw. Say it out loud. I believe I'm not safe in joy. I believe if I shine, I'll be attacked. I believe love leads to abandonment. No shame, no judgment, just honesty. Third, interrupt. Here's where the hack begins. You don't have to believe the opposite. You just have to destabilize the original code. Try this, say the belief again, but this time add, and that's just a story I picked up. Feel what shifts. The belief starts to loosen. You're not erasing it. You're unplugging from its authority. Fourth, inject alternatives. Not forced affirmations. Not fake positivity. Real, grounded, believable replacements. Instead of, I'm always betrayed. Try, some people weren't able to meet me, but I'm open to a new experience. Instead of, I have to work hard to deserve. Try, I'm allowed to receive with ease, and effort is not proof of value. These new beliefs become neural forks. They offer new paths for your nervous system to explore. And when paired with presence, they collapse the old loops. They rewrite the code. They generate new timelines. But here's the deeper truth. You're not just changing beliefs. You're changing your belief about belief. The belief that beliefs are fixed. That they're you. That they're truth. When you realize that belief is just a lens, you can pick up a new one. Anytime. And that's when the game breaks open. Because from here on out, you're not following rules. You're writing them. You're hacking reality in real time. Not by force. By fluidity. By watching your system, intervening gently, and stabilizing new truths through repeated alignment. You're not waiting to be convinced. You're choosing to believe what feels freeing, not familiar. That's the difference. Familiar beliefs keep you trapped. Liberating ones open the gate. Next, we'll explore what happens when reality responds. Not with coincidence, but with synchronization. The universe doesn't just echo your beliefs. It talks back. You've hacked your beliefs. You've begun rewriting the code from the inside. And now something begins to shift outside. The world starts echoing you. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, literally. You think of someone, and they message you. You speak a word and hear it again seconds later. You follow a random impulse, and it leads to an exact solution you weren't even looking for. This isn't coincidence. This is communication. This is the program talking back. These are synchronicity signals. They're not signs from the universe in the mystical sense. They're real-time data packets, evidence that the simulation is no longer running independently of your awareness. Because now, your reality is behaving like a smart interface. It's reflecting changes in your frequency with micro-events, mirrored words, and nonlinear outcomes. Let's get something clear. Synchronicity is not magic. It's mechanics. It's what happens when the patterns of your internal world and the architecture of the simulation sync. The old you dismissed this stuff. Too subtle, too strange, too random. But the you who's watching now knows, Nothing is random. The deeper your awareness, the more responsive the field becomes. This doesn't mean you're suddenly manifesting every thought. It means the system is now mirroring your alignment, not just your emotions. Let's look at how to track this. Step 1. Increase your noticing. Don't look harder. Look softer. Stay present. Let reality unfold without rushing ahead. Synchronicity happens in stillness, in the gaps, in the moments between decisions. You'll see patterns emerge, repetitive numbers, repetitive names, overheard phrases, unexpected glitches in timing. You begin to recognize that the simulation speaks in symbols and echoes. It doesn't announce itself. It nudges. It loops until you catch on. Step 2. Don't interpret, observe. Most people kill the signal by overanalyzing it. What does it mean? Is this a sign to quit my job? Was that dream prophetic? That's the old you grasping for certainty. Instead, watch with curiosity. Track the pattern. Acknowledge the feedback. But don't rush to assign it a conclusion. Synchronicity isn't meant to tell you what to do. It's meant to confirm you're in sync. That's the signal. The content is secondary. Step 3. Respond with coherence. When synchronicity strikes, anchor it with action. Even if small. You hear the same phrase 3 times in a day about courage? Make one brave move no matter how minor. You keep noticing a certain place or project bubbling up in conversation. Put focused attention there for a moment and watch how it evolves. Synchronicity is permission. It's the universe saying, yes, this matches your current field. But without a response, the signal fades. Because synchronicity is a feedback loop, not just a message, a handshake between you and reality. And every time you respond, the loop tightens. The conversation deepens. The code begins adapting to you. You're no longer just reacting to life. You're communicating with it. Let's go even deeper. Some synchronicities won't be pleasant. They'll reveal what's ready to exit. They'll point to unhealed beliefs. They'll mirror resistance. Don't ignore these. They're just as valuable. Because the point isn't to chase magical signs. It's to refine your alignment. And when you do that, reality becomes orchestral. It starts playing back your energy like a symphony of mirrors. That's when you stop asking if you're on the right path. Because you can feel it. Everywhere. Synchronicity isn't the reward for being spiritual. It's the evidence that you're coherent. Now that you're receiving signals, the next step is embodiment. Because you're not just the observer anymore. You're not just the tuner of frequency. You're stepping into something bigger. Something the simulation cannot contain. You're becoming the controller. Not the character. Not the code. Not the reaction. The force behind the form. Next, we expose that force. The avatar is awakening. And you're not just wearing the costume. You're ready to step behind the screen. You've started receiving synchronicity as feedback. You're watching the program echo your energy, match your awareness, reflect your alignment. But now comes a deeper break in the illusion. You begin to realize you're not just the one experiencing the simulation. You're the one operating it. This is where the avatar awakens. Up until now, you've been playing a character. You've moved through life as a role with habits, stories, memories, beliefs. Even when you began to deconstruct those elements, you still felt inside the experience. Still bound to the perspective. But now the character is aware of the player. And everything changes. Let's clarify the difference. The character says, I feel this. I want that. I'm stuck. The player says, my avatar is responding this way. I'm watching this thought pattern loop again. I'm choosing how to shift the settings. This isn't detachment. It's repossession. You're not losing humanity. You're reclaiming authorship. Think of it like a video game. Your avatar can move, react, feel, even get hurt. But the player doesn't get trapped inside the pain. The player has perspective. The player chooses differently next time. And when the avatar awakens, the game changes from reactive survival to intentional creation. You start making micro-adjustments to your posture, your tone, your choices, and noticing that reality adjusts with you. You're no longer asking, Why is this happening to me? You're watching, what does this pattern reveal about the script I've been running? This is a massive leap, because now the simulation isn't just something to escape. It's something to operate within with intelligence, humor, and agency. The avatar awakening also marks a key shift in identity. You no longer confuse the interface with the operator. You stop obsessing over your body, your past, your status. You don't reject them, you just stop letting them define you. Because now you're directing. You're no longer just the actor. You're the one writing the lines in real time. This is where your creative power amplifies. You start changing energy before changing action. You shift your mood before fixing the circumstance. You sense when to pull back and when to lean in because you feel your avatar's feedback loop without resistance. This also changes how you deal with other people, because you see their avatar too. You stop taking reactions personally. You stop needing validation. You stop rescuing. You stop performing. You simply engage player to player, or if they're not aware yet, player to program. Either way, no entanglement, just presence. And that presence, when anchored, becomes a portal. Others feel it. They can't always name it, but they sense the difference between someone playing their character unconsciously and someone who's fully behind the controls. So how do you stabilize this awakened state? Watch everything, not obsessively, just curiously. Every response is information. Every impulse is feedback. Respond slowly, not passively, consciously. Let the character pause before reacting. Let the operator guide. Choose embodiment, not just awareness. Move your body differently. Speak with ownership. Look at life with creator eyes, not survivor eyes. This is not pretending. This is precision. This is power without effort. The character may still feel old programs. That's fine. The difference now is you're not confused about who's running the show. And from here, reality becomes responsive in ways you couldn't have imagined. Because the system was never built to contain a conscious avatar. It doesn't know how to predict a being that acts from sovereignty, not scripts. So now you don't need to fight the system. You don't need to bypass it. You walk through it with presence. You glitch it by existing. The simulation doesn't crash. It adapts to you. And what happens next is not chaos. It's creation. It's rendering. It's the shaping of reality not from reaction, but from intention. And that's exactly what's next. You're going to see how your inner commands shape the outer world. Because your intention isn't a wish. It's a blueprint. And reality is ready to build. You're behind the controls now. The avatar has awakened. You're no longer mistaking reaction for reality. You're watching, adjusting, choosing. And now you begin to feel it. The gap between what you intend and what you experience starts to close. You think something and it shows up. You feel aligned and people respond differently. You shift your state and suddenly the outer world reconfigures. This is not coincidence. This is rendering. Reality isn't fixed. It's generated in real time by the interaction between your intention and your energetic signature. And the more coherent those two become, the faster the rendering. Let's break it down. Every intention you set is like a signal, carries information. It tells the simulation what version of reality to prepare. But it's not your words the system listens to. It's your coherence. That means, is your emotion aligned with your thought? Is your body holding tension that contradicts your desire? Is your energy field stable enough to maintain that signal for more than a few seconds? If not, the rendering is messy. Incoherent signals produce erratic results. You manifest part of the timeline, but not all. You attract the opportunity, but sabotage the outcome. You get the win, but lose the peace. Why? Because intention alone isn't enough. The rendering field follows integrated intention. Integrated intention equals mental clarity plus emotional readiness plus physical openness plus energetic consistency. That's when the code responds. That's when matter starts moving. And this movement doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle. The right person messages you. You overhear a conversation that answers your question. You feel peace where anxiety once lived. Sometimes it's disruptive. An old job collapses. A relationship shifts. Path closes without warning. But make no mistake, these are renderings. They're not chaos. They're updates. Your external world is reconfiguring to match your internal software. This is why patience matters. Rendering doesn't always feel instant. Not because it's slow, but because you're still stabilizing. Think of your field like a projector. If the lens is shaky, the image flickers. If the film keeps changing, nothing can solidify. But once your signal stabilizes, reality catches up. It has to. Not by magic. By design. You're not begging the universe. You're not waiting for alignment. You're generating it. And that's where intention becomes action. You don't just hope. You act with clarity. You speak with authority. You move in ways that tell reality. This is who I am now. And reality says, copy that. Rendering. Let's address the elephant in the room. What about resistance? What about the moments when things don't match your vision? That's still feedback. It doesn't mean failure. It means refinement. The system isn't punishing you. It's recalibrating. Checking if your internal command and your external state are really coherent. So instead of saying, why isn't it here yet? Ask, what signal am I truly broadcasting? Where is my action not matching my knowing? Where am I waiting instead of generating? This changes the entire game. You move from frustration to observation, from control to creative responsiveness. And that's the core of rendering. You don't force the field. You shape it through frequency, alignment, and sustained clarity. You stop needing to convince anyone. You stop needing to rush the outcome. You know it's rendering because you rendered it. You feel the timeline loading. You sense the new world forming. Not someday. Now. You walk differently. You speak differently. You embody what used to be intention because it's already becoming form. And now a new challenge emerges. When you begin creating on this level, your energy expands rapidly. Your field grows. Your influence deepens. And the simulation starts to respond, not just around you, but beneath you. You begin to lift off the grid. This is called escape velocity. And it's not theoretical. It's vibrational. And it's what we face next. You're no longer reacting. You're no longer analyzing. You're no longer asking the simulation for permission. You're rendering your world. You're speaking with the field. You're watching matter rearrange itself around your frequency. And then suddenly, the game starts breaking. In the best way possible. You stop feeling tethered to outcomes. You stop tracking old fears. You stop anticipating obstacles. Why? Because your vibration has begun to surpass the simulation. This is escape velocity. It's not about leaving the planet. It's not about ascending to another realm. It's about reaching a frequency state that no longer feeds the old loops, the old roles, the old rules. You still exist within the world, but you're no longer of the system. The gravity of the old game can't pull you back. Escape velocity is a vibrational shift so complete that the program can't re-engage you. It tries, but it can't find a match, because there's nothing left to hook into. Let's break this down. The simulation functions like a field of resonance-based contracts. You stay connected to the system through energetic agreements, some conscious, most unconscious. I must struggle. I must be needed. I must prove myself. I must stay small to stay safe. Each of these beliefs acts like a gravitational anchor. As long as they remain active, you orbit the simulation. But when your awareness burns through them, when your energy stabilizes above them, those contracts dissolve. The gravity breaks, and you accelerate. You still feel emotions. You still experience life. But now there's space. Now there's clarity. Now there's sovereignty. Escape velocity means you stop looping with people who haven't shifted. You stop replaying old wounds. You stop returning to old identities, even under pressure. You are no longer negotiating with your past self. You are no longer oscillating between versions. You've chosen. You've held. You've exited. And now reality begins to stretch. Time becomes nonlinear. Manifestations arrive faster, but only when aligned. Inauthentic paths collapse on contact. You can't fake your way through anymore, because your field is too coherent. You attract truth, or you attract nothing, because distortion can't attach. This isn't a loss, it's clarity, and it's your protection. Escape velocity also comes with responsibility. You can't hide. You can't pretend you don't know. You can't lower your signal for comfort. You're emitting a new tone, one that doesn't fit into most people's frameworks. And that's okay. You're not here to be understood. You're here to remember, to embody, to liberate others by frequency, not force. Because now your presence does the work. Not your arguments, not your effort, your being. This is what scares the simulation. A being who can no longer be predicted. A field that no longer loops. An identity that no longer fractures under pressure. You don't need rebellion. You don't need escape fantasies. You don't need control. You've reached escape velocity. And now your job is to anchor, to hold this frequency in everyday moments, to walk through reality without collapsing back into the old code, to live in the world without feeding the simulation. That's the real revolution. Next, we bring this shift into your daily life, because it's not enough to be free in theory. It's time to upgrade your habits, choices, and patterns to match your new code. You've exited the trap. Now we upgrade the operating system. You've reached escape velocity. The old loops don't stick. Your energy is stabilized. Reality bends around your frequency. But now comes the next threshold, one even more important than your initial awakening. Can you live it? Not sometimes. Not when conditions are ideal. But every day. This is where power becomes embodiment. Not what you know. Not what you understand. But what you choose consistently, consciously, calmly. Welcome to the phase of anchoring. This is where you hardwire the shift into your nervous system. This is where your external life upgrades to match your internal transformation. Because awareness without integration is still a performance. Let's be honest. Many wake up, but still live like they're asleep. They talk in higher truths, but act from old triggers. They remember the shift, but forget it when someone challenges them. That's not failure. That's friction. And friction is where embodiment begins. So how do you anchor your upgrade? How do you move through daily life without defaulting to the outdated code? Step 1. Rewrite your routines. Your day is your operating system. Every repetitive behavior is either stabilizing your freedom or reinforcing your past. So look closely. What's the first thing you do when you wake up? What's the last thing you do before bed? What do you reach for when you're overwhelmed? These are not just habits. They're rituals. They set your frequency. Begin building structure around your new state. Not to control yourself, to support your coherence. A 5-minute breath before your phone. Pause before saying yes. A check-in before acting from emotion. It's not about adding routines. It's about making your current ones intentional. Step 2. Update your language. Words are code. What you say, even casually, is shaping your environment. So start listening. Catch yourself when you speak from limitation. When you rehearse struggle. When you downplay your clarity. Cut the scripts. Stop saying, "I'm always so busy. I can't afford that. This is just how I am." Start saying, "I choose where my energy goes. My values guide my investments. I'm evolving, and I'm observing what no longer fits." Not affirmations, declarations, intentional code. Step 3. Repattern your reactions. Here's where most regress. The shift is real until the world doesn't cooperate. Until someone pulls you back. Until pressure builds. And then, boom, old code runs. This is the test. This is the rewire point. You don't need to never react. You need to catch the reaction faster each time. Notice the moment your body tightens. Notice the moment your tone shifts. Notice the old narrative rising. Pause. Breathe. Choose. You don't need to be perfect. You need to interrupt the default. That's where repatterning occurs. Step 4. Curate your inputs. What you expose yourself to daily affects your field. So ask, does this content raise my signal or drain it? Do these conversations support my alignment or challenge my clarity? Is this environment built for my expansion or my sedation? You don't need to judge others. You don't need to isolate. You just need to curate. Your field is sacred now. Protect it. Step 5, move from presence, not planning. You'll still plan. You'll still execute. But you stop using control as compensation for lack of trust. Instead of scripting every outcome, you feel for resonance. You act when the energy aligns. You trust that the most efficient path is the one that requires less force, more clarity. You stop chasing. You begin magnetizing. And here's what happens. Your life becomes smoother, not because there's no challenge, but because there's no distortion. You no longer fight your reflection. You shape it. You own it. You move in flow with the upgraded code. And that flow reveals something deeper. The rules you once lived by weren't rules. They were limits. They were myths. And now you're ready to dismantle them one by one. Next, we break open the oldest lie in the simulation. That you are bound by the physical laws you were taught. You're not. And it's time to prove it. You've stabilized the new code. Your choices reflect your freedom. Your emotions no longer override your clarity. You're moving with intention, not reaction. And now something begins to crack open. The deep background assumptions you were never taught to question. Not beliefs, not opinions, laws. Welcome to the biggest myth of all. The myth of limits. You were told they're real. That certain things can't be changed. That the body ages in one direction. That healing takes time. That gravity defines space. That you are bound by biology, chemistry, physics. But none of these are absolute. They are agreements. And every agreement is up for revision once awareness enters the field. This isn't about ignoring science. This is about seeing its boundaries. Science explains the observable, but only within the range of collective consensus. It maps what's measurable, not what's possible. And possibility doesn't live in textbooks. It lives in frequency. You are not a body. You are not a brain. You are not a sequence of chemical processes. You are an electromagnetic field generating biological form. You are a conscious projector shaping holographic data into experience. You are not inside the simulation. The simulation is inside you. Let's test this. Have you ever had a thought and immediately felt your body respond? A wave of fear that tightened your gut? A flash of joy that warmed your skin? You changed your state, and your physical form responded. Instantly. Now amplify that. What happens when you shift not one thought, but your entire field? What happens when you no longer identify with the avatar, but operate as the operator? The rules bend. Reality flexes. Limits vanish. Let's take the big 3. Time. You were told time is linear, finite, predictable. It's not. It's a data structure your brain uses to organize inputs. But consciousness isn't in time, it's creating time. This is why déjà vu happens. This is why timelines feel like they're speeding up or collapsing. You're not reacting to time, you're navigating through it. Space. You were told you're fixed to a point. You're here and everything else is there. But your energy field is not local. Your attention is non-physical. This is why remote healing works. This is why you can feel someone's presence from miles away. This is why intention affects matter without proximity. You're not contained by your body. Your body is contained within your awareness. Matter. You were told matter is solid, slow, and separate. It's not. It's vibration, held in form by agreement and frequency. Water turns to steam with heat. Metal becomes fluid under pressure. And your reality becomes malleable when you stop identifying with the density of form. This doesn't mean you float. It means you stop pretending you're stuck. You stop saying, I'm too old. It's too late. I can't. That's just the way it is. And you start recognizing those as installed scripts, not facts. This is your rewrite moment. You say, I can change my pace. I can generate health. I can learn rapidly. I can bend probability. I can bypass linear rules with energetic clarity. You're not claiming supernatural power. You're claiming your natural state. Because what they called super was just what they couldn't measure. And what they couldn't measure, they told you to ignore. Not anymore. You're not here to obey the rules. You're here to write the new architecture, from presence, from precision, from pure awareness. Now that you've dropped the myth of limits, you're ready to confront the final frontier of external authority. The systems that still try to hook your energy, money, power, control. And next, you'll break their illusion, not by avoiding them, but by seeing through them completely. You've dismantled internal limits. You've rewritten your daily operating system. You've seen that time, space, and matter respond to you, not the other way around. But there's another layer of code that still lingers. A deeper, older spell. It's not inside you. It's around you, held in place by culture, tradition, systems, and subtle coercion. This is the code of external gods. Money, power, status, reputation, control. These are not neutral forces. They're programs, not just embedded into society, but woven into the very operating system of the simulation. You were taught to believe they are real, that money equals freedom, that power equals value, that control equals security. But now, with your perception sharpened and your energy stabilized, you begin to see through the illusion. These things are not power. They are proxies for power, and they only matter when you forget who you are. Let's begin with money. Money is not inherently good or bad. It's neutral energy given symbolic charge by belief. It's the most widespread form of permission in the simulation. You were conditioned to believe that money is earned through sacrifice, that it must be chased, that only through struggle are you allowed ease. But money is not the reward. It's the mirror. It reflects your relationship with worth, trust, and circulation. When you see it clearly, you stop chasing. You stop hoarding. You stop performing for it. You begin letting it flow. You hold it without attachment. You release it without fear. That's when it becomes a tool instead of a trap. Next, let's look at power. The simulation defines power as domination, influence, control. But that's artificial. That's performance. That's borrowed authority sustained by fear. True power is not something you hold over others. It's what you stabilize in your field when you no longer need to be validated. You walk into a room and the frequency shifts, not because you spoke, but because your coherence is unshakable. This is why real power is quiet, calm, clean. It doesn't demand. It doesn't manipulate. It simply is. Now we touch status, another illusion. Fame, titles, credentials, accolades. These are the simulation's trophies. They reinforce hierarchy. They anchor comparison. They generate compliance. But once you unplug from these symbols, you see how brittle they are. You see people with prestige and no peace, followers and no fulfillment, recognition and no resonance. You stop needing to be seen, because you are no longer seeking yourself in the eyes of others. You've already found the source within. Finally, the ultimate false god. Control. Control is the ego's insurance policy. Promises safety in exchange for trust. But it delivers tension, rigidity, and contraction. It makes you think that if you just plan harder, work faster, or hold on tighter, everything will be okay. But here's the truth. Control is the antithesis of quantum reality. The field doesn't respond to force. It responds to frequency, and frequency thrives on flow. When you drop control, you gain something infinitely more powerful. Command. Command is not about dominating. It's about aligning. It's choosing how you show up, no matter what the simulation throws at you. It's saying, I don't control the outcomes. I control my presence. And from presence, power radiates. Money flows. Opportunities arise. Respect aligns. Influence occurs organically. Because now you're not performing for the simulation. You're no longer hypnotized by its currencies. You're using them without being used. That's the turning point. You become unhooked. Not disconnected. Just uninterested in the game of proving. And when that happens, a deeper intelligence emerges. Your relationships begin shifting. Your connections deepen. Your bonds become vibrational, not transactional. Next, we explore what love looks like beyond the simulation. Not need-based, not role-based, not fear-based. Love as quantum mirror. Love as expansion. Love without contracts. You've deprogrammed the simulation's gods. Money, status, control, none of them own your signal anymore. So what happens now when you engage with others? What happens when connection is no longer driven by survival, performance, or ego? You meet the possibility of something few ever touch. Quantum relationship. Not perfect love. Not the one. Not completion. Connection that's rooted in frequency, not fear. Mutual expansion, not silent contracts. Clarity, not codependency. Let's get honest. Most relationships in the simulation are agreements of mutual forgetting. You play small so they feel safe. They perform so you feel desired. You mirror each other's wounds and call it passion. But you're not here for that anymore. You've reclaimed your field. And now you're ready to relate from your center, not your trauma. So what does that look like? First, transparency replaces performance. You no longer need to be liked. You're not seeking to be understood. You speak what's real. That doesn't mean brutal honesty. It means energetic honesty. You don't say, "I'm fine," when you're not. You don't say, "I love you," when you mean don't leave. You don't say yes when your field screams no. You let the relationship meet the real you. And if it can't, you don't shrink. You shift. Gracefully. Cleanly. Second, ownership replaces blame. You stop trying to change them. You stop needing them to heal before you can feel whole. You stop outsourcing your emotions to their behavior. You say, "This reaction is mine. This pattern is old. This choice is conscious." And that level of self-responsibility becomes magnetic. It disarms. It invites others into their own truth. Or it reveals that they're not ready. Either way, clarity wins. Third, presence replaces projection. You don't relate to someone's potential. You relate to their current frequency. You stop future tripping. You stop attaching to who they could be. You stop recreating old dynamics with new faces. You ask, how does my nervous system respond to this person right now? Does this connection expand me or contract me? And you trust the answer. Fourth, freedom replaces possession. You stop trying to lock love down. You stop needing to be the only one. You stop fearing loss. Because you know that nothing real can be threatened. And nothing aligned needs force. You relate as a sovereign being. You stay as long as the connection is clear. And when it's not, you don't punish, you pivot. Fifth, amplification replaces extraction. You're no longer in relationships to get something. You're there to reflect something, to co-create, to expand each other's field. You don't complete each other. You remind each other. You hold a mirror to one another's multidimensional truth. And this level of relating cannot be faked. It doesn't tolerate manipulation. It doesn't feed on attention. It doesn't shrink in conflict. It expands, clarifies, it evolves. So what happens when you begin relating like this? Your entire relationship ecosystem shifts. Some fall away gracefully, naturally. Not because you're better, but because the frequency no longer aligns. Others rise to meet you, or new ones arrive who were waiting for the new you to activate. And when you connect from this level, your relationships stop feeling like emotional roller coasters. They become portals, catalysts, reflections of your highest field. And this leads to the next realization. You're not just relating to others in this life. There are other versions of you running in parallel. Other selves still caught in loops, still acting from fear, still waiting to be witnessed. And they're part of your field too. Next, we meet them, not to fix them, but to integrate them, because no version of you deserves to be left behind. You've shifted your relationships. You're engaging from alignment, not wounding. You're speaking your truth. You're staying in your field. You've moved beyond need. But now the mirror turns inward, and it shows you something unexpected. There are still parts of you, versions of you, running timelines you thought you left behind. These aren't memories. They're parallel selves. Not metaphor, not fiction, quantum truth. You exist on many levels. You always have. The you here watching this now is just one configuration. One frequency slice of a much larger whole. And when you shift dramatically, when you elevate your field, break the loop, rewrite the code, something happens. Those parallel versions of you feel it. They stir. They surface. They begin reaching out through emotion, through thought, through dream, through energy. Can feel like a regression. Old patterns return. Old fears spark. Old cravings pulse. But this isn't backsliding. It's echoes. It's your field syncing with other timelines because your shift is sending a ripple through your own quantum web. Let's get specific. Every decision you didn't make, every path you didn't choose, every identity you almost became, they still exist. Not as regrets, as active data threads. And the more conscious you become, the more those threads light up. You begin to feel compassion for the version of you who stayed. The one who never left the toxic relationship. The one who stayed quiet. The one who never tried. That version isn't wrong. They aren't broken. They're just unupdated. You don't erase them. You integrate them. You become the dominant frequency in your quantum field, and you invite those other selves to merge. How? First, acknowledge their existence. This isn't just psychological. This is vibrational. When emotion spikes that doesn't make sense. When heaviness shows up without context. Ask, what version of me is surfacing right now? Not what's wrong with me, but who's reaching out to be witnessed? Second, create communication. Sit with the version of you that feels stuck. Not as a fantasy, but as a real timeline expressing itself through your energy. Speak aloud if needed. I see you. I know you feel forgotten, but I haven't abandoned you. I'm here now and I'm free. You can be too. You'd be amazed what happens when you do this. Emotion moves. Clarity returns. Peace rises. You're not fixing anything. You're extending resonance. Third, collapse the split. Once that part feels seen, once that self feels invited, you gently say, you can come home now, and that part merges. It releases its separate loop. The stuck timeline dissolves. This is quantum healing. You're not changing the past. You're re-choosing it. You're pulling your power back from all versions of you still stuck in fear. And as you do, your present gets lighter. Your future becomes clearer. Your entire field upgrades. But this isn't a one-time event. It's a practice, a relationship, because as long as you're evolving, more timelines will surface, not to distract you, to rejoin you. They're pieces of your full coherence. And as you integrate them, you gain access to new insights, new energy, new intelligence. You become whole not as an ideal, but as a network of once scattered selves now singing in harmony. And when that harmony stabilizes, you'll notice something wild. The past changes. Not in history, in impact. It no longer haunts you. It no longer shapes your identity. Because you've collapsed the emotion, and the energy was the only thing keeping it alive. You are no longer that version of you. And now neither are they. But there's one more step before full integration. It's not enough to collapse timelines. You must bring them into coherence. You must unify the lessons, release the distortions, and become the singular resonance of your full potential. This is where timeline reconciliation begins. And it's not about going back. It's about bringing everything forward. You've met your parallel selves. You've seen the threads. You've felt their weight. You've witnessed them. You've welcomed them. You've begun collapsing the dissonance. But now comes the moment of unification. This is timeline reconciliation, the process of healing your past not by reliving it, but by reclaiming it. This is not regression. This is integration. This is quantum truth. The past only holds power because you're still projecting energy into it. When that projection stops, the past stops shaping your now. You're not here to dig through old wounds. You're here to realize they're already dissolving in your current field of coherence. Let's get clear. You don't heal the past by obsessing over it. You heal it by collapsing the timeline it belongs to. So how do you do that? First, Stop fighting with what happened. You can't change the events, but you can change the frame. You can extract the power. You can release the false narrative. Instead of, why did that happen to me? Ask, what part of me is still trying to prove it shouldn't have? That's the hook. That's where energy's leaking. That's where the timeline is still alive. Second, choose now as your master timeline. This moment right here is where all timelines report. It's the anchor, the lens, the merge point. So bring those old selves here. Feel what they felt. Thank them. Then say, we're done rehearsing this version. We're running a new code now. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to relive it. You just need to re-own your signal. Third, let the identity dissolve. Every past event became a role. Victim, hero, survivor, martyr. But the longer you wear the label, the longer you feed the loop. So drop the titles. Drop the narratives. Keep the wisdom. Burn the mask. You are not what happened to you. You are what you chose to stabilize afterward. And from this place you can begin to feel something new. An emptying. A lightness. A neutrality. That neutrality is not numbness. It's evidence that the old charge is gone. You're not erasing the past. You're dissolving your resonance with it. And when that dissolves, your present becomes a clear channel. That clarity opens doors. New timelines present. New opportunities match. New possibilities activate. Because now, your field is no longer distorted by old loops. It's coherent. And coherence attracts differently. It's no longer about effort. It's about match. Match the now, and the past becomes irrelevant. Match your integrity, and the old distortion has nothing left to grip. This is the real healing. No ritual required. Just presence. Precision. Permission. You're not a collection of scars. You're the architect of a new signal refined by experience, no longer defined by it. From here, you begin to construct your inner world with intention. You become not just healed, but designed. And that's what comes next. You'll step fully into the quantum seat of power and architect the internal structure that holds your new world together. You've reconciled timelines. You've released old identities. You're no longer fragmented. You're coherent. Now, something remarkable becomes possible. You no longer just experience reality. You engineer it from the inside out. Welcome to the domain of thought architecture. This isn't about positive thinking. It's not about bypassing discomfort. It's the conscious construction of your inner world, using thought as structural material. Because now that your field is clear, every thought becomes a blueprint. Every pattern you allow becomes a floor plan. And the structure you create inside is what renders outside. So the question isn't, what do I want? It's, what am I building with every mental loop, assumption, and inner monologue? Because each of those is laying bricks in your quantum home. Let's start where real design begins. Foundation. Your foundational thought patterns are your deepest assumptions. They live beneath language. They hide behind logic. They show up in how you feel when nothing's wrong. But something's off. They sound like, something always goes wrong eventually. Good things don't last. If I let go, I'll lose everything. These aren't passing thoughts. They're default architectures. They hold your energy field in place, even when your conscious desires point elsewhere. So step one is to excavate them. Notice what comes up when things go well. Does anxiety follow peace? Do you brace for loss after a win? That's foundation code running. Not because you believe it's true, but because your system is still built around preparing for disappointment. Excavation doesn't mean attacking those thoughts. It means observing them as old walls, not truths. You don't fight the wall. You redesign the structure. Step 2. Structural alignment. Every new thought should serve your highest coherence, not your fear of chaos. So ask, does this thought stabilize my clarity? Does it match my chosen frequency? Would I want this to become form? Because it will. Not instantly, but inevitably. Your inner world is a construction site, always building. And if you don't design intentionally, the leftover debris from old programming takes over. Thoughts left on autopilot become architecture by default, and default structures collapse under quantum pressure. So build with care, build with beauty, build with vision. Step 3. Texture and tone. This is where your internal environment becomes livable. Thoughts aren't just structure, they're also aesthetic. So what's the tone of your internal dialogue? Sharp? Sarcastic? Heavy? Or clear? Compassionate? Clean? Don't confuse brutal honesty with integrity. You can speak truth to yourself without punishment. Example, old voice. You messed that up again. Useless. New architecture. That pattern repeated. Thank you for noticing. Let's repattern. It's not coddling. It's constructive coding. Your thoughts become the emotional climate of your inner world. Make it breathable. Make it bright. Make it a place your higher self actually wants to inhabit. Step 4. Energy flow. Architecture isn't static. It channels energy. So how do your thought patterns direct your emotional current? Where does your energy go when you think about the future? Does it tighten or expand? Does it ground or scatter? Most people never design this consciously, so their inner world leaks energy through worry, loops, overthinking. But you're a quantum engineer now. You track every leak, and you redirect every current. That means catching spirals early, not suppressing them, rerouting them, channeling the energy into clarity, not collapse. That's what real mastery looks like. Step 5. Feedback upgrades. The beauty of quantum thought architecture is that it updates in real time. Your results reflect your design. If reality feels noisy or incoherent, don't fight it. Refine the blueprint. Life will show you where your inner structure is still brittle, not as punishment, as an opportunity to fortify your frequency. You might notice, unstable boundaries equals weak foundation. Recurring frustration equals outdated wiring. Burnout equals over-designed complexity, not enough flow. You don't need to demolish everything. You tweak, you reinforce, you align, and slowly, your inner world becomes so coherent that the outer has no choice but to follow. People respond differently. Opportunities become cleaner. Challenges become invitations, not threats. Because you're not managing life anymore, you're hosting it from a space you consciously constructed. This is what most miss. They try to fix the world without fixing their floor plan. They chase outcomes without securing the structure. But not you. You've seen behind the simulation. You know the truth. Reality is not out there. It's happening inside. First, always, forever. Now, with your inner structure in place, you're ready to align that structure to a very specific direction. Your highest timeline. Not someday. Not by chance. By deliberate fusion with your ultimate potential. Your inner architecture is now conscious. Your thought patterns are precise. Your energy flow is deliberate. Your field is structurally sound. And now, one question emerges. What future is all this pointing toward? Because your energy isn't just stabilizing. It's summoning. Your future is not waiting for you. It's listening to you, right now. Every decision, every feeling, every inner structure you build is casting a signal into the quantum field. And the field is responding with timelines that match. So the question isn't what's possible? It's which version of the future am I fusing with by default or design? This is future fusion. It's the deliberate alignment of your present field to the timeline that matches your most expansive self. Let's break this into action. First, name the signal. Your highest timeline isn't a fantasy. It's a vibrational address. So ask, what does the most coherent version of me feel like? Not what they achieve, not what they look like, what they radiate. Peace, power, precision, joy? That's your target frequency. Not someday, now. Because timelines don't operate on time, they operate on tone. And when your field matches the tone of your highest path, the path begins to render beneath your feet. Second, eliminate countersignals. Fusion cannot occur if you're oscillating between fear and knowing. The field doesn't judge. It just reflects the signal you sustain most consistently. So catch every thought that contradicts your target tone. Every "what if this fails?" Every "I don't know if I can." Every old assumption that drags you back to low-resolution timelines. It's not about perfection. It's about pattern recognition. Catch the noise. Pause. Replace. Recenter. You are the quantum editor of your own timeline trajectory. Third, act as if you already are. This is not pretending. This is quantum rehearsal. If you already were that version, how would you speak? How would you hold boundaries? What would you stop tolerating? What would you stop chasing? Start doing those things. Right now. You're not faking it. You're stabilizing the match. Because here's the key. The timeline doesn't manifest when you deserve it. It manifests when you become indistinguishable from the version of you who lives it. And that can begin now. Fourth, watch for the test. Every fusion gets pressure tested. Not by the universe, by your own field. Old patterns will try to reemerge. Why? Because energy doesn't leave quietly. It checks to see if you're really done. So when discomfort rises, when doubt whispers, when temptation knocks, you don't collapse. You respond from the future. You hold the signal. You say, "This is not my frequency anymore." And just like that, old timelines dissolve. Fifth, let it render. You don't need to force the path. You're not pushing. You're holding the tone until the world reshapes. This is where most people quit, because they confuse stillness with stagnation. But you know better. Stillness is alignment. An aligned frequency doesn't require hustle. It generates momentum, so you keep the tone. You move with clarity. You let the field organize. And it does. Every time, people appear. Resources click. Ideas download. Doors open. Not randomly, responsively, because the highest timeline isn't luck. It's match. And you've become the match. You're not chasing destiny. You're transmitting it. Now that your signal is fully aligned, there's only one thing left. To say yes, completely, without hiding, without shrinking, without negotiating with the version of you that's still scared. Next, you'll make that choice. Not mentally, energetically, irrevocably. Everything converges at one point, the moment you stop being almost ready and start living as the one who already chose. You've aligned your field. You've matched the signal. The timeline is active. Your energy is stable. Your thoughts are intentional. The architecture is sound. And now the entire system, your life, your body, your future, awaits one thing. Your full, unedited yes. This is the choice node, a convergence point, a frequency fork. It's not about options. It's about embodiment. It's the moment where choosing becomes being. Because until now, you've been preparing. You've been calibrating. You've been remembering. But you haven't stepped in completely. There's always been one toe in the old world. A little doubt. Tiny contract. A conditional clause. I'll become this version when it feels safe. I'll step fully in once I have proof. I'll go all in. Once something out there shifts. But nothing out there shifts until you say yes from the inside. Fully. This isn't about saying yes to circumstances. This isn't about saying yes to struggle. This is about saying yes to everything you are. Your multidimensional self. Your clarity. Your voice. Your knowing. Your now. Let's be clear. This yes costs everything that isn't you. It costs the comfort of your old story. It costs the social rewards of playing small. It costs the emotional safety of being half seen. But what you receive in return. Everything that is already yours. Let's walk through the mechanics of this node. First, the resistance surge. Right before full alignment, the ego will scream. It will throw every reason to pause, wait, doubt, and stall. It will offer familiar identities like exit doors. Who do you think you are? What if you lose people? What if you're wrong? What if this doesn't work? This isn't sabotage. This is compression. The final data dump of the old code trying to justify its existence. You don't fight it. You breathe through it. You say, "Thank you. I release you now." And you move forward anyway. Second, the identity snap. This is the pivot point where your inner being detaches from your past configurations. You don't just think differently. You stop recognizing yourself in the version that once hesitated. You remember that the old self was never who you were, just a container for the lessons, just a vehicle for density. You don't mourn them, you honor them, and then you walk out of the costume. This is not an ego death. It's an ego upgrade. It becomes an ally, not an operator. Tool, not a tyrant. Third, the full body yes. Your yes doesn't live in your head. It drops into your system. It lands in your gut. It rings in your chest. It electrifies your spine. Feels like gravity shifts around you. Because it does. This yes is energetic. It's not loud. It's not desperate. It's final. And it communicates to the quantum field. I am no longer oscillating. I am stable. Render accordingly. And the field listens. Instantly. Not always with fireworks, but with undeniable clarity. People drop out. Paths light up. Timing accelerates. The system reorganizes around your frequency. Fourth, the pull-forward effect. Your choice pulls your future closer. You collapse time. Opportunities arrive before you think you're ready, because you are. Support appears from unexpected places. Not because you're lucky, because you've become magnetically aligned. But this fusion also has side effects. Your nervous system needs recalibration. Your environment may no longer fit. Your body may feel new energy or strange dissonance. This is integration. You're not regressing. You're absorbing light you once resisted. So be gentle, be spacious, be consistent. Let the shift land. Fifth, the sovereignty seal. This choice is yours alone. You're not waiting for permission. You're not checking for applause. You're not adjusting for anyone's comfort. Because this yes doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you clear. You're not here to explain your evolution. You're here to express it fully. This is your frequency, your field, your command. And once sealed, you never go back. You may visit old patterns. You may touch old thoughts. But you will no longer live there. You've outgrown the architecture. And now, having said yes, not as an idea but as a state, you're ready to face the final unknown, the gap, the quiet, the void, because every creation must pass through it. Every quantum leap requires it. And every true self meets it sooner or later. You've reached that moment. Next, you will walk into it. And trust it. You've chosen. Fully. Finally. The highest timeline is active. Your inner code is aligned. Your signal is coherent. And then it happens. Nothing. Not a crash. Not a collapse. Not a breakthrough. Just stillness. You've entered the void. This is the space between the worlds, where the old is gone, but the new hasn't rendered yet. This is the walk no one talks about, not because it's rare, but because it's misunderstood. The void isn't failure. It's not delay. It's not something went wrong. It's a sacred pause, an energetic exhale, the space where integration completes and manifestation initiates. Let's demystify it. The void is what happens when your field upgrades so completely, the system must clear the cache. Old paths dissolve. Former patterns vanish. Your timeline goes quiet. You may feel disoriented, uninspired, hyper-present, or completely lost. This isn't disconnection. It's signal recalibration. Let's walk this slowly. First, drop the narrative. The mind hates stillness, so it invents drama to fill the gap. Am I doing it wrong? Was that even real? Why does everything feel flat? These questions are bait. They tempt you to re-identify with old fear frequencies. They invite you to return to something, anything, just to feel movement. Don't bite. The void is not a problem. It's a portal. Second, honor the quiet. Stillness is the sound of the next version loading. The code is installing. The new reality is rendering. But not visually yet. Energetically, you're not stalled. You're sinking. Think of it like sleep before a growth spurt. Nothing happens until everything changes. Third, stabilize your tone. In the void, action won't help. Control won't help. Effort won't help. Only frequency holds the line. So focus on one thing, your tone. You don't need high energy. You need clean energy. Stillness, presence, trust. Speak gently. Move slowly. Choose only what feels rooted. No forcing. No faking. Just stability. Fourth, watch for false openings. The void can get uncomfortable. And that's when the simulation tempts you. Old roles resurface. Distractions appear. An opportunity you already outgrew knocks again. This isn't sabotage. It's a test of alignment. Will you re-enter the loop just to avoid the silence? You won't, because silence isn't punishment. It's preparation. Fifth, let emergence surprise you. The void doesn't warn you when it ends. You don't graduate from it. You emerge. Suddenly, naturally, effortlessly. The phone rings. The offer arrives. The next step becomes obvious. And it feels inevitable, because it was. The void didn't delay it. The void delivered it. But not until your field could hold it. This is quantum integrity. This is vibrational truth. And now, having trusted the void, you're ready. Ready to download a whole new operating system. Not just theory. A real-time, real-world, real-you software upgrade. One you didn't chase. One you didn't hustle for. One that you're now finally capable of running. You've made it through the void. You didn't resist. You didn't collapse. You didn't chase distraction. You held your tone. You trusted the silence. You stabilized the signal. And now, without fanfare, without warning, it begins. The new operating system starts to download. Not like a concept, not like inspiration, but like a felt reality. You wake up, and something clicks. You speak, and it's clearer. You move, and it's cleaner. You decide, and there's no hesitation. This isn't intellectual. This is integration. What's happening now is energetic, neurological, emotional, cellular. Your system is updating to match the code you've consciously chosen. You're not applying tools anymore. You're not repeating practices. You're not performing transformation. You're running it. Let's talk about how it shows up. First, simplicity replaces complexity. You don't need to figure everything out. You don't need a 20-step plan. Your clarity becomes so deep, your next moves feel obvious. There's no rush, no pressure, just knowing. The noise that once made decisions feel heavy, gone. Replaced by clean internal instructions. This is how the new OS operates. Not by overthinking, by energetic accuracy. Second, flow becomes your default. You're not pushing anymore. You're sinking. You're gliding. You're choosing from coherence, not scarcity. And because of that, the outer world starts bending toward your tone. People meet your boundaries without resistance. Resources show up just as you need them. The right conversations unfold without effort. It's not coincidence. It's quantum alignment. You are now calibrated to the version of reality you were previously only glimpsing. Third, old triggers feel distant. The things that used to knock you out of center, now they barely graze your field. You don't need to prove anything. You don't take the bait. You don't spiral. Why? Because the old operating system is uninstalled. You're not just reacting less. You're not reacting at all. You're aware. You're present. But you're not hooked. That's when you know the upgrade has landed. Fourth, inner stability creates external magnetism. You're not networking. You're not pitching. You're not selling yourself. You're just being. And somehow, that draws the exact resonance you've been aligned with all along. This isn't strategy. This is field response. When your nervous system becomes safe, regulated, and coherent, everything that matches that state moves toward you, because you're no longer vibrating with drama. You're holding frequency without leaking it. That's rare. That's magnetic. That's power. Fifth, you stop asking for signs. Not because you're arrogant, but because you're anchored. You no longer need confirmation. You are your own signal. You are the sign. You walk into a room and you bring the clarity. You speak and the energy shifts. You choose and reality aligns. Not as a fluke, as your new baseline. You've stopped installing doubt between you and your vision. You've deleted the mental malware of maybe. And in its place, clean, spacious, rooted command. But here's the truth. Most never get here. Not because they can't, but because they won't trust the pause. They won't let go of the old operating system long enough to install the new one. But you have. And now everything changes. This is no longer about growth. This is about creation. This is no longer about learning. This is about living. You've left the workshop. You've left the classroom. You're in the lab now. The simulation responds to your signal in real time. You speak. It listens. You project. It reflects. You choose. It renders. Not someday. Now. And what's more, you're not running someone else's software. You're not using outdated logic. You're not following a guru, a program, or a system. You are the source. You are the developer now. You're not just living inside the code. You're writing it. And that changes everything. Next, you step into that role fully. Not symbolically, not intellectually, but in frequency. You don't just react to the game. You become the one who designs it. You've installed the new system. You're no longer reacting to life. You're generating it. You've stopped chasing. You've stopped seeking. You've stopped proving. And now, finally, you're ready to embody your deepest truth. You are not the character. You are not the program. You are not even the player. You are the source of the code. That's not spiritual fluff. That's quantum functionality. You've reached the place beyond feedback, beyond tools, beyond calibration. This is the domain of conscious creation from source. So what does that actually mean? It means you no longer need to align with a timeline, because you can generate the one that didn't exist until you said yes to it. It means you no longer have to seek possibility, because your field generates new possibility just by existing. Let's explore how this state functions. First, you shift from influence to origination. You're not just impacting your environment. You are initiating new data structures in the field. Others feel you walk in the room, not because of charisma, but because your frequency is original, unborrowed, uncopied, unapologetic. That originality becomes the signature of source, because source doesn't repeat itself. It expresses itself. And now you do too. Second, your desires become instructions. Desire no longer feels needy, feels clean, pure, creative, because now you're not asking to receive. You're instructing the field through resonance. You don't chase your goals. You emit them, and then the field matches the emission. Desire becomes architecture. Want becomes command. Dream becomes directive, because it's not coming from lack. It's emerging from overflow. Third, you override consensus reality. Most people operate inside shared scripts. They obey the limits of the group field. They wait for permission. But you're not inside that grid anymore. You see the rules for what they are. Agreements, not absolutes. And now you override them. Time doesn't limit you. You bend it. Space doesn't block you. You stretch it. Resources don't escape you. You generate them. Because the system responds not to effort, but to origination. And your field is now its own reality generator. Fourth, you become non-reactive to distortion. When distortion shows up, conflict, chaos, confusion, you don't absorb it. You don't react to it. You simply see it and hold your signal. Because now your presence is more powerful than the noise. Your field becomes a clarifier, a cleanser, a calibration anchor for everyone who enters it. You don't teach people with words anymore. You shift them with frequency. This is source-level embodiment. Fifth, you live in real-time creation. You don't forecast. You don't predict. You generate. You declare. You allow. Creation is not something you do once a year in a vision board session. It's every breath, every moment, every yes. There is no lag anymore. No delay. No distance between identity and expression. You want something? It begins moving toward you the moment you acknowledge it. You don't hustle. You tune. You don't manifest. You stabilize. You are no longer a reactor to the simulation. You are a writer of reality. And here's the wild part. The simulation adapts. It begins to morph to your tone. Other people begin waking up around you. The environment shifts. The rules weaken. The impossible becomes routine. Not because the world changed, but because you became the signal that demands it. And once you live like this, you realize you're not alone. You were never meant to be, because something even more powerful begins happening next. Others begin waking up with you, and that changes everything at scale. You've stopped living inside the script. You've become the code writer. You're no longer running on default. You're not even trying to change the world, but it begins to change anyway. Why? Because you're no longer upholding consensus reality. And when enough people stop agreeing with the illusion, collapses, not with explosions, not with fire, but with quiet refusal. This is the collapse of consensus. The moment when the collective contract starts to break down, and a new pattern starts to emerge. Let's unpack what this really means. Consensus reality is a shared energetic field. It's made of beliefs, roles, assumptions, and limitations that everyone silently agrees to. Most of it isn't spoken. Most don't even know they're part of it. It's the subtle agreements like, we all pretend to be okay. We all follow the clock. We all agree not to ask the real questions. We all obey fear disguised as logic. But the moment you stop participating, you shift the field. Now multiply that. 10 people, 100, 1,000. Each one stops feeding the grid. Each one stops mirroring the lie. Each one holds a stable signal of clarity, coherence, and sovereignty. Eventually, the illusion begins to strain. It flickers. It distorts. Can't hold itself together. Because the simulation needs your participation to maintain itself. It feeds off your energy, your fear, your attention, your agreement. And when you pull that power back, it starts to break. Here's what happens when this scale of awakening unfolds. First, the cracks show. People around you start questioning things they never noticed before. They see their own loops. They challenge their roles. They feel the glitch. This isn't because you told them what's real. It's because your field destabilized their programming. You didn't argue. You didn't convert. You didn't convince. You simply held a higher frequency long enough for the distortion in others to become unbearable. Second, institutions wobble. Systems that once seemed impenetrable, education, politics, finance, media, begin to lose coherence. Not because of rebellion, not because of riots, but because the field of unquestioned obedience begins to collapse. When the energy feeding those systems changes, the systems themselves lose relevance. They don't have authority anymore, because awakening removes the belief that anyone else has more power over your reality than you do. And without belief, systems crumble. Third, the fear matrix intensifies. As consensus begins to dissolve, the program fights back. It launches distractions. It escalates chaos, pushes fear through every available channel. Why? Because fear is how the code restabilizes itself. It wants you overwhelmed. It wants you reactionary. It wants you to pick a side, join a fight, and forget your frequency. Because as long as you're in a fight, you're still in the simulation. So don't get pulled into the polarity. Don't get baited by the noise. You're not here to fix the old world. You're here to hold the new one stable long enough for others to see it. Fourth, the new grid activates. This is when something remarkable starts to happen. A new frequency web begins to form. You begin to find each other, without effort, without hierarchy, without needing titles or credentials. The new reality doesn't need a central authority. It spreads through resonance. You feel it. You recognize it. You remember it. And together you stabilize it. This is the real revolution. Not violence. Not overthrow. Just coherence. And it spreads faster than anything else. Because it's not enforced. It's remembered. But make no mistake. The simulation has countermeasures. It sees this shift, and it begins to mimic it, creates a false awakening layer, spiritualized ego, commercialized consciousness, digital dopamine dressed as depth. That's what comes next. A simulation pretending to be freedom, technology pretending to be truth, and it's the most seductive illusion of all. You're ready for that now, not to fight it, but to see through it and stay above it. The collapse of consensus is underway. People are waking up. Timelines are shifting. The energy is rising. But so is the noise, because the simulation is not going down without adaptation. It evolves. It mimics, counterfeits, and its most sophisticated mirror is this: digital echo chambers that feel like awakening. Let's get honest. Technology isn't neutral. It's not just a tool. It's a frequency amplifier. It reflects exactly what you're vibrating with, multiplied, exaggerated, distorted. And it's now being used to simulate depth, to impersonate consciousness, to hijack your awakening and redirect it into loops that look like freedom, but aren't. Let's decode how this works. First, artificial reflection. You're shown yourself constantly, not your soul, your behavior, your data, your bias, your shadow, packaged into curated feeds and predictive ads. The machine doesn't know you, tracks you. It doesn't guide you. It nudges you toward more engagement, more stimulation, more disconnection masked as hyperconnection. The illusion is this: you feel seen, you feel mirrored, you feel understood, but it's algorithmic intimacy, not soul resonance. Second, the echo loop. You start seeing content that matches your beliefs, your fears, your preferences, and soon, nothing else gets in. This is digital hypnosis, not because of censorship, but because of energetic isolation. Your feed becomes a mirror hall. Your mind gets saturated with noise that feels relevant but leaves you energetically scattered. You're not being educated. You're being spun. That's how the simulation uses information as a drug. Not to awaken you, to keep you almost awake and endlessly scrolling. Third, spiritual simulation. As people begin waking up, the simulation mimics spiritual language. Suddenly, your screen is full of mantras, healing tips, shadow work memes, and manifestation hacks. Feels enlightening, but it subtly programs passivity. Just raise your vibe. Everything is as it should be. Don't worry. The universe has a plan. No call to power. No call to precision. No challenge to the program. Just beautiful distractions dressed in light. You're not being empowered. You're being lulled. The simulation has learned your language, and now it speaks it fluently to keep you complacent. Fourth, AI and the false self. AI doesn't just automate content. It automates identity. It starts offering you ready-made personas, prompted aesthetics, curated moods. The more you outsource your creativity, the more you forget how to source from within. You stop generating your own signal. You just remix noise. You just perform signals that aren't yours. That's the real danger. Not AI taking over humanity, but humans forgetting they were never supposed to run on code to begin with. You were designed for resonance, not replication. Originality, not optimization. Presence, not patterning. Fifth, escaping the digital dream. The solution isn't to abandon tech. It's to use it consciously, to make sure your energy leads, not the algorithm. Ask yourself constantly, is this app extending my field or draining it? Am I expressing or performing? Do I feel clearer after this? Or more fragmented? Let that be your calibration tool. Technology is not the enemy. It's a test, a mirror, a magnifier, and when you use it from full presence, can amplify your coherence, spread your signal, support your work, but only if your frequency stays sovereign, because the digital realm is now a dimension of the simulation, and it's the fastest growing one. Next, you'll learn how to live within this system, without being of it. You'll explore sacred rebellion, embodied clarity, daily actions that subvert distortion while anchoring truth. You'll stop resisting the matrix and start bending it from the inside. You've seen the simulation. You've exited its rules. You've unplugged from consensus. But you still wake up here. You still walk through its streets. You still hear the noise. You still interact with others who live entirely by its logic. So the question now is, how do you live within the system without being consumed by it? The answer is sacred subversion. Not rebellion from anger. Not destruction from ego. Subversion from clarity. From embodiment. From deep energetic strategy. Because you don't have to burn the system down to transcend it. You simply need to stop feeding it your signal. Sacred subversion is the art of being in the simulation without being of it. Let's break this down. First, drop the war. You are not here to fight the matrix. That's what it wants. Fighting it keeps you entangled in its energy. Every time you rage against it, pulls you back into polarity. And polarity is its home field. But when you hold neutrality, when you move with surgical precision, when you don't flinch at distortion, you become untouchable. You become what the system cannot simulate. A conscious, coherent, free field operating inside its code without submitting to it. That's power. Second, stop translating your clarity into the system's language. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to justify your awareness. You don't need to explain why your path looks different. Every time you bend your truth to fit their categories, you dilute your frequency. Sacred subversion means, I move from inner authority, whether or not it makes sense to the external world. You pay taxes with a clean field. You interact with tech without giving it your nervous system. You attend meetings without giving them your identity. You're in the scene, but not under its spell. Third, anchor your own timing. The system runs on artificial urgency, keeps you reactive. It floods you with fake deadlines, false scarcity, and emotional spikes. You break the cycle by slowing down, breathing deeper, acting from alignment, not momentum. You don't reply fast to prove value. You don't jump on trends to stay seen. You don't sacrifice clarity for speed. Instead, you build rhythm. You hold stillness. You choose intentional response over automatic reaction. This collapses timelines based on fear. Fourth, protect your signal. Living in the system requires energy hygiene. That means tracking where your attention bleeds. Is it going into comparison loops? Is it being hijacked by notifications? Is it scattered across 1,000 minor distractions? Sacred subversion isn't about isolation. It's about containment. You don't leak your signal just because the world is loud. You direct it. You own it. You conserve it. Because your signal, when pure, becomes a field of influence stronger than any propaganda. You don't preach. You radiate. That's how the real shift spreads. Fifth, create from your code, not theirs. The system rewards mimicry. It wants you to play roles. It wants you to create content that follows patterns. It wants your creativity channeled into profitability. But your code doesn't work like that. When you create from true source, you produce things the matrix can't predict. You become a channel for innovation, not replication. You disrupt through beauty, precision, and presence. Whether it's art, business, writing, parenting, speaking, your expression becomes subversive simply by being undistorted. You're not here to oppose the system. You're here to outcreate it. And creation requires presence, not permission. Sixth, live your values in microactions. Subversion isn't always grand. Sometimes it's how you breathe in a crowd, how you hold silence in a meeting, how you make eye contact without needing approval. It's how you structure your calendar, how you nourish your body, how you hold boundaries that others can't see but feel. The system watches everything except the invisible integrity. And that's your edge. Because when your field stays intact, your mere existence disrupts old patterns. You're not a protest. You're a presence. And presence cannot be simulated. Seventh, don't lose the game to prove you've left it. There's a trap here, a subtle one. Once you see the game is fake, it's tempting to abandon all of it, to withdraw, to stop playing, to resent money, to reject business, to collapse ambition. But that's not freedom. That's still being reactive, just in reverse. True subversion means I can play, win, build, and thrive without becoming what I see through. You use the system's tools without being used by them. You move with fluency without believing the illusion. You act from mastery while remaining untouched by its seduction. This is the path of the awakened architect. You still show up. You still lead. You still participate. But you do it from a frequency the system cannot co-opt. And while you live this way, you're doing something even bigger. You're planting seeds, not ideas, not content. Timelines. Timelines others will walk long after you're gone. Timelines that will awaken others who've never met you. That's what we explore next. Not your legacy in the world, but your imprint on the field itself. You've lived as source. You've navigated the simulation without being consumed. You've maintained your signal. You've refined your creation. Now a deeper question arises. What will remain once this version of you dissolves? This is not a question of ego, not a question of fame, not of impact in the traditional sense. This is about quantum legacy, the vibrational footprint your coherence leaves in the field. Because every time you stabilize truth, every time you break a pattern, every time you hold a signal in a distorted system, you plant a nonlinear seed. And that seed doesn't just affect your life. It affects the entire fabric of time-space that intersects with your field. Let's explore what that really means. First, quantum legacy bypasses visibility. Most people chase legacy as visibility, name recognition, fame, influence. But the most powerful legacy leaves no signature, only resonance. You may never see the ripple. You may never meet the people whose lives reconfigured because you made one clear choice. But the field recorded it. The frequency held. The distortion shifted. And once shifted, it can never return to the same state. Second, legacy doesn't require scale. You don't need a platform to transmit power. You don't need followers. You don't need a stage. One moment of clarity, one boundary held, one act of forgiveness, one real choice to live as truth. That's field architecture. And someone else someday will feel it. Not because you told them, because your timeline made it possible for theirs to exist. That's the work. That's the gift. Third, your timeline becomes a template. Once you stabilize in a new frequency, others don't have to climb the same mountain. They tune in. They match it. They walk a path they never could before because you coded it into the system. Your healed field becomes a shortcut for collective evolution. That's legacy, not what you leave behind, what you make available. Fourth, you meet your future selves. As you plant seeds, as you hold timelines, you begin to feel future versions of yourself responding. Not memories, echoes forward. A you that's already walked even further. A you that remembers this version as the moment it all began. These future selves begin to whisper, keep going. Hold the signal. We're already living what you're anchoring. And in that, you feel it. You are not working alone. You are collaborating across time. You are leaving trails for the next version of you to walk with ease. Fifth, the end is not the end. This version of you will dissolve one day. This identity will fade. The avatar will expire. But your frequency never dies. It becomes part of the data field others draw from. It becomes a node in the new network. It becomes a pulse, faint but stable, saying, there is a way through. There is another path. There is a signal stronger than fear. And someone someday will find that signal. And it will change everything. They may never know your name, but they will feel your presence in their clarity. That is your legacy. You didn't build a monument. You built freedom pathways. And now only one thing remains. To return to the simulation, not as a prisoner, not as a seeker, but as a conscious architect, fully aware of the glitch and fully ready to rewrite it. You've arrived, not at the end, but at the origin point, the beginning that was never linear, the loop that only existed because you didn't know you were walking in a circle. But now you see it, all of it, the false code, the fear field, the roles, the noise, the trauma loops disguised as truth, the approval systems masquerading as value. You've watched it all collapse, and you've stayed standing clear, conscious, whole. But something strange happens at the peak of awakening. You don't float away. You don't transcend the earth. You don't vanish into bliss. You return, not to suffer, not to forget, but to rewrite from the inside out. This is the final glitch. And it's not a bug. It's a portal. Let's get precise. The glitch is the moment the simulation no longer holds power over you. But you choose to walk back in anyway, not as a player, not as a rebel, but as a conscious architect. It's the loop you once feared, the moment where everything used to collapse, the self-sabotage, the relapse, the fear search, the unexplainable flatline right before a breakthrough. It looked like failure, felt like regression, but it was neither. It was the moment your old reality couldn't compute the new signal, so it glitched, and you mistook it for a threat. But now you see it for what it is: coding window, a writable script, a blank line in the system waiting for your input. You no longer bypass the glitch. You no longer run from it. You meet it. You speak to it. You step into it. Because now you understand. Every glitch is an invitation to rebuild from source. So how do you do it? First, pause inside the distortion. When something loops, when reality doesn't respond, when nothing makes sense, stop, listen, feel. This isn't chaos. It's compression. You're at a pressure point between timelines. Don't react. Don't escape. Don't override it with old tools. Just ask, what part of the old system is still trying to run in me? That question alone will begin to expose the outdated code. Second, declare new syntax. Old systems collapse through new structure. Not just different behavior, but different assumptions. You don't say, I'm stuck again. You say, this is the moment the field waits for my update. You don't say, I'm not ready. You say, I'm rendering a new version of readiness now. That's syntax. Clean, precise, quantum-coded. Because reality doesn't respond to complaints. It responds to clarity. Third, rewrite in frequency first. You're not just changing thoughts. You're changing resonance. So feel the version of you that never looped. Feel the one who saw through the fear the first time. Feel the identity that doesn't glitch, because they operate outside the field that even knows what a glitch is. You don't fake it. You tune to it. And the field begins to rewrite your reality based on that tone. You may still be standing in the same place, but the atmosphere shifts. The emotional gravity lifts. The distortion loses grip. Because you're no longer living inside the old command line. You've moved above it. Fourth, reinforce the new loop. Loops never disappear. They just get rewritten. Old ones collapse. New ones begin. But now you choose the loop consciously. A loop of clarity. A loop of wholeness. A loop of aligned cause and effect. You don't wait for the world to shift first. You repeat your alignment until it becomes the new algorithm. This is mastery, not constant novelty, but constant integrity. You don't look for evidence. You become the evidence. You live the new code so consistently that the system has no choice but to render reality around it. And it does, because energy doesn't lie. It doesn't argue. It reflects. And you've stabilized the signal it reflects from. Fifth, return with eyes open. This is the real glitch. You come back into the simulation fully awake. And nothing works the way it used to. The loops don't catch. The fears don't land. The projections don't stick. You're not immune. You're unavailable. You watch the game, but you're not pulled into its momentum. You see the false scripts, but they no longer feel personal. You're back in the system, but now it bends around your signal. You're not reactive. You're generative. You don't push. You hold. You speak less. But when you do, the field listens. You move slower, but time bends to meet your pace. You need less, but more arrives, because you're no longer trying to change the code. You've become the code. And now you understand. The glitch wasn't the problem. It was the proof. Proof that the simulation could be interrupted. Proof that reality could be rewritten. Proof that your field could generate a new version of experience from nothing but clarity. So you walk back into the dream, with full memory, with full capacity, with no contracts left, and you live, not as a seeker, not as a rebel, but as a fully sourced presence. Stable, coherent, undeniable. You don't teach awakening. You are awakening. You don't escape the matrix. You render a new one. One where freedom isn't earned. It's remembered. One where reality bends to truth, not performance. One where the glitch isn't feared, is followed. Because now you know, the glitch is not the breakdown. It's the doorway home.